Hey guys, sorry for the late upload, I kinda got burnt out but I'm back. Chapter 235 Special Examination. Multiple groups of students, clad in armor and holding their weapon of choice, stood before the teleportation gate. Whoa, look at them, one guy said, capturing the attention of many students. So all these rankers are on one team, I envy them, another guy said. Just then, Kevin's team was entering. Everyone on the team was a ranker, with the exception of Rhea Adler. Their allure attracted considerable attention from the students. However, seeing their competition, some students grew even more anxious. This examination was designed to grade the hunter teams. Some of them were really striving to score well, and having half the rankers on one team stirred a bit of envy. Usually, only 2 or at most 3 rankers would be on a team, as previous midterms took place in teams of 4, but this time, World Academy increased the team limit from 4 to 10. This led some students to lose hope, as they stood no chance of winning against the 2 teams comprising all the rankers. Reliance on others' abilities to win wasn't ideal, but they couldn't help feeling that the top 2 spots were already decided. The professors aren't here yet? Rio asked, scanning the area. It was 7 a.m. and all the first-year students were instructed to assemble before this time, but only students had gathered here with their teams. Around 130–140 teams had formed. Almost all the teams were balanced, except for a few ready for the increased difficulty of having top-ranking students on their teams. Attention students, we'll start soon, so if your teammate hasn't arrived yet, gather them immediately, a professor announced. Some people began using their ID bracelets to hastily call their tardy teammates. At another portal gate, Asha's team stood, with Dahlia ensuring that everyone on her given list was present. It was true, that girl is indeed on their team, some students whispered among themselves. Seeing Alyssa confirmed the rumors, but no one dared to speak too loudly. But did he really outperform all the mages? One guy asked his mage teammate. Yeah, and it was a C-rank monster as well. His teammate replied with a nod. But isn't he a swordsman? A girl in their team asked. Yeah, he was supposed to be a sword user, but I don't even know at this point, their team leader replied. Each hunter team had a team leader responsible for guiding them in the test and managing the team. Let's just hope we don't have to face them, he said. I don't think we'll directly compete with other teams, so we'll be fine, the girl replied. Yeah, she's right. Some of the professors hinted that it'll be a dungeon-based test. The mage of their team chimed in. Then our composition should work, the team leader responded. Most hunter teams adhered to the pattern of having a few mages and weapon users for protection. Each team consisted of 6–8 students, with some having even 9 or 10, but most didn't. Having too many people on their teams meant that their grades would decrease, so most teams opted not to have 9 or 10 students. Listen carefully, apart from this team, all of you will be competing in the dungeons we have prepared for you, Dahlia announced, pointing to Asha's team. We'll take you to the dungeons, and you have 7 days to clear them. If you can't do it, you will fail this exam. Dahlia's words made some students nervous. So there will be no one following us like last time, one of them muttered. Everyone understood that this time they wouldn't receive any external help, but Dahlia didn't mention that 2 instructors were told to go inside the dungeon much earlier than the students to prevent the situation that occurred with Asha and Alyssa. Farnes didn't want to take any chances now, so he personally chose all of them, who were A-rank hunters that could ensure the safety of the students while maintaining the fairness of the test. So we're not going with them? Damien asked, raising his hand. Dahlia looked at Asha's team. No, I'll take you to the place where your test will be held separately, Dahlia said. Due to the fact that 2 teams have all the rankers, we've given them a much higher difficulty than all of you, Dahlia mentioned to all the students, in case anyone thought it was unfair that they were not going inside a dungeon. What kind of test will they go through? Some students wondered, whispering among themselves. Everyone, exit through that portal in the order your team is called, Dahlia commanded. Eager not to waste time on trivial matters, teams began moving towards the portal, entering as their names were called. As for you guys, we've prepared a maze-type dungeon with special traps. You need to compete with the other team traversing the same dungeon, Dahlia said, approaching where Asher and his team stood. Maze dungeon? Vanessa asked, puzzled. It's a dungeon with multiple starting points, Amelia replied. Having heard about it, exactly, consider it as a race, but we've altered the structure of the dungeon by placing monsters that we want you to compete against, Dahlia explained. Also, there will be numerous traps we've placed to slow you down, Dahlia added. So what's the winning condition? Asher asked. You need to reach the center where there will be 2 medallions, take one and exit the dungeon, then race against the other team to reach the final destination and place the medallion on the final spot, Dahlia explained. We've anticipated that both your teams will place in the top 2 ranks, so we'll determine the positions with this test, Dahlia mentioned, not fully explaining the difficulties they would face. Asher realized they intended for them to compete with Kevin Whiteheart's team, but this still didn't make sense as even in a race, Asher could help them win by clearing all the monsters himself. Are the monsters we'll face different? Asher asked. Dahlia raised her eyebrows, slightly surprised that Asher had already grasped the structure of the exam. Yes, but it's done to ensure that you guys take this test as a team, Dahlia replied. She didn't mention the traps, Asher thought to himself. He figured that the traps they would encounter would also differ from what Kevin's team would face. The fact that they'd placed external monsters indicated they'd carefully selected monsters that would force them to act as a team. The same was true for Kevin's team, who were receiving a similar explanation from another professor. Maze-type dungeons were different from regular dungeons. The center of the dungeon was always the boss room, and every 5 minutes, the starting point would shift to one of the 4 edges. This was the basic rule followed in every maze-type dungeon. Is the medallion a compass? Asher asked one final question. Dahlia smiled, realizing Asher understood the true nature of the test. It didn't matter if they reached the center first. The real test was outside the dungeon. Yes, and Professor Neyman is present there, so he'll explain the rules to you guys there. Now, enter the portal, Dahlia instructed, glancing behind. All the teams had entered, so the place had become empty. Now, good luck, Dahlia said. Asher turned towards the portal, while the rest of the team remained silent. So what should we do? Damien asked. Should we change our formation? He asked Asher, who was leading them. Their previous formation was designed to clear a dungeon by killing monsters, but now the test was a bit different. No, we'll follow the same formation, Asher replied. Well, if you say so, Damien said, surprising the whole team with his casual interaction with Asher. Even Sam was taken aback like the others on their team, seeing Damien talk so naturally with Asher. Only Amelia, who had known Damien from a young age, was aware that he was the only one who could talk to Asher so casually without feeling awkward. Most people, including Sam and Vanessa, found it difficult to interact with Asher, who always carried an indifferent look on his face. It was hard to know what he was thinking while his crimson-red eyes stared at you. This made most people avoid engaging in conversation with Asher since they couldn't discern his thoughts, given his lack of facial reactions. As they all arrived on the other side, they were greeted with a sight of a mountainous path inside a large forest. Is this Fascia? Amelia asked, noticing the environment around them. Yes, welcome to Fascia, Professor Neyman said, as Amelia turned to see a huge camp where the people of the World Academy were staying. And this is your test site, Neyman said, signaling a guy to come near him. This man will take you to the dungeon entrance, but before that, I need to explain the rules of this test, Neyman said with a smile on his face. As you know, the dungeon you will be entering will be a maze-type dungeon, Neyman explained, so both the teams are supposed to enter at an interval of 5 minutes each. This was crucial because the dungeon's starting point would change every 5 minutes. Although the dungeon had 4 such starting points, only 2 teams were competing, so they didn't need to wait any longer than 5 minutes. The rules of this test are simple. Don't execute any lethal attacks on the opposing team, Neyman cautioned. You can fight them at any point in the test, but don't take the fight too far. He added, ensuring everyone understood his point. You can use all sorts of tricks, but none of you can leave the dungeon before you secure a medallion, which will be present in the boss room, Naaman explained. Can we use our artifacts? Damien asked, since his shield was an artifact. Yes, artifacts are allowed, Naaman replied. Remember, this is a test, so make sure to work as a team, Naaman advised. We will monitor all of your performances and grade you accordingly, he added. Wait, wouldn't the team that enters first have an advantage over the team that goes in second? Sam queried. Don't worry, we will give you tracking rings to ensure something like that doesn't happen, Naaman assured him. Any more questions? Naaman asked. They all shook their heads in response. Well, this old man will go and rest. Best of luck to you guys, Naaman said as he turned to leave. Follow me, I will take you to the dungeon. The staff member stepped forward after Naaman ended his conversation. On their way, except for Asher and Alyssa, all of them were observing the place they were in. Although they were told it was Fascia, they didn't know where in Fascia they were, and the course of the race could be affected by that information. I hope we're not in the south of Fascia, Sam expressed with a frown. Why south? Vanessa asked. Although there aren't any deserts in the south of Fascia, if this is the south, we need to be careful about the plants around us, Damien explained. Some of them are very poisonous, and the terrains house many small beasts that share these characteristics as well. Damien was aware of this because his brother Nate would always be engrossed in reading books that mentioned such things. By spending time with Nate in Saran, he had heard about these aspects numerous times. As they were following the staff member, Asher was walking at the end, with Alyssa ahead of him, using her wheelchair to navigate. The path to the dungeon had already been cleared by the World Academy, so Alyssa didn't have to use her magic to float. After a few minutes, they arrived in front of a large blue gate dungeon, where Kevin and his team were already waiting. Oh, they arrived before us, Damien remarked, observing Kevin's team. The tension in the air thickened when Kevin noticed Damien's mocking smirk. Sam observed Damien's behavior and began to understand the kind of person Damien Seymour was. Damien was always nice with Asher and Amelia, but most people who interacted with him found him infuriating. Is he trying to provoke them? Sam wondered. Although Damien was essentially good-natured, his mischievous streak often led others to believe he wasn't that decent. However, his reputation was still better than Asher's, who was avoided by almost every student in the World Academy. Even senior year students didn't want to get involved with him. Okay, everyone is gathered here, Xander said, scanning the crowd. I assume that you all already know the rules of this test. He continued, this is a C-rank dungeon, but we have placed the monsters of our choice with various traps inside, so don't try to predict the monsters based on the environment inside the dungeon, Xander warned. Both team leaders, step forward, Xander commanded as Kevin and Asher walked to the front. They stood facing each other. Kevin Whiteheart's team will go first in 20 seconds from now, Xander declared, glancing at the timer on his wrist. Let's go, Elena commanded, striding towards the entrance of the dungeon. Eva followed her, while Rhea cast a glare at Asher's team. Matthew was the only one who didn't care about such theatrics. He merely needed to follow Leonard's orders and give his best to ensure their team won. He examined the amount of artifacts their team had and concluded that their chances of winning had significantly increased. Apart from Eva, who had already received the artifact that her brother Reese had left for her, everyone was given artifacts from Kevin's sister, Relin Whiteheart. The spear that Kevin was holding was the same one he had won at the auction. Matthew didn't know about Asher and his team, but he knew that Sam was only using a rank C spear, which he had purchased recently, and no other artifact. Damn, they're trying so hard to win, Damien said in a voice loud enough to carry. Look at all those rings, he added in a mocking tone. Amelia understood that Damien was trying to rile up their emotions before the match began, but she shook her head. He is enjoying this too much, Amelia thought to herself. Though she was confident, she didn't want to underestimate the others before securing a win. Elena was about to retort, but they needed to enter the dungeon now. Remember, you cannot move until the ring we gave you lights up, Xander instructed as he watched Kevin's team enter the dungeon. Kevin entered the dungeon, but he couldn't help but feel angry at Damien's mocking stare. "They will regret their words," Kevin muttered as he turned back to look at his team. His confidence came from the fact that more than half of his team had already reached D rank. Elena, Licia, and Matthew had reached D rank, with Kevin being the first to achieve it on his team. "So, are we following the same plan?" Licia asked, looking at Eva. "Yeah, this is a race, so we just need to reach the final position first. It doesn't matter how," Eva replied with a smile. They started discussing their strategy while outside the dungeon. Asher and his team were still waiting for their turn to enter. Xander was talking with one of the instructors about the safety of the exam. This time, they had taken extra steps to ensure the exams occurred safely, without any incidents. They were unaware, but Xander and Naaman had control over all areas within a 20 kilometers radius of this dungeon, and security runes were placed to alert them if anything went awry. The rumors about Zephyr had also reached the World Academy, but they didn't care much about it as the elite families would handle it themselves. "It's time," Xander told Asher. "Enter with your team," he commanded as Asher stepped towards the dungeon entrance. The rest of them followed, casually strolling towards the dungeon gate. "The moment you enter, the test will begin, so don't waste any time or you will be left behind," Xander cautioned. Watching as Asher and his team entered the dungeon, Xander floated above the ground, observing the course from a higher vantage point. He decided to wait there and supervise the test himself. He didn't need to worry about what was happening inside the dungeon as 4 professors were already there, monitoring the activities of the 2 teams. Communicating with the outside world from inside the dungeon was impossible, with only a few artifacts possessing such capabilities. So, 4 professors were sent inside the dungeon a lot earlier than the 2 teams, and they were going to grade the teams based on their performances. Inside the dungeon, Professor Naaman worked hard for this, Armin commented, looking at the projection in front of him. Naaman used various runes and connected them in a way that allowed all the professors to monitor the teams simultaneously. "Don't lose focus," Elsa reminded Armin. "But aren't these traps too difficult for the first years?" Another professor asked. "Well, given the talents we're dealing with, I think it's fine," a 4th professor replied. As the 4 professors conversed, Asher moved inside the straight path that led them deeper into the dungeon. "So they are monitoring us." Asher noticed various runes, thanks to his incredibly high mana sense. "Hungry?" a voice echoed in Asher's head. "Don't worry, you will get your food," Asher mentally replied. It was the voice of Riffa. He had already confirmed that Riffa would be completely invisible if he used his perfect conceal ability, and he planned to use this dungeon to feed his beast. eth''az inverted exclamation mark sense inverted exclamation mark broken bar section cubed broken bar currency f degrees middle dot f tm dot f registered. "Why is the lighting here so dim?" Vanessa complained as she stepped on a dead monster's skull. "It shouldn't be like this originally," Sam replied. "Maintain the formation, and stay behind me," Asher said, interrupting their conversation. He didn't want them to step out of line and stumble onto some rune formation that would trigger a trap. "These guys are doing well for first years," the 4th professor said as he watched both teams. In Kevin's team, the one leading was Elena, followed closely by Kevin. Although not comparable to the Greville, the Rothschild's bloodline ability made it easier for their descendants to accumulate and accept mana in their bodies. It was a bloodline that affected their affinities with mana instead of granting them control over mana. The Greville family was unique in having a bloodline that allowed a person to control mana as they wished, and due to this, Elena had the highest mana sense compared to the whole team. Kevin was the only person who could compete with her in terms of mana sense. but it required him to use his lightning element. So, instead of wasting his energy, Elena suggested she take the lead. The reason Asher and Elena were leading their teams was to avoid rune formations set in the dungeon. Unlike monsters, they didn't know what the rune formations would do to them. In this race, they needed to be more aware of the runes than the monsters they would face. And just like that, Asher's team began moving inside the dungeon, but they were maintaining their pace and not rushing toward the center. "Are you okay?" Vanessa whispered to Alyssa. "Yeah," Alyssa replied as she kept floating in the air. If her body had not been healed, Alyssa could only have maintained floating in the air for an hour, making her the worst teammate in dungeon exploration. But currently, her body was healed, so she could maintain floating for 6-7 hours. The only reason to stop would be the intense headache she would get as a side effect of using gravity magic. "I can't sense all the runes." Asher spread his mana sense to cover a lot of distance ahead of them. Did he do this knowing I am a Gravel? Asher thought. Stop for a second. Asher raised his hand as everyone halted. Did something happen? Damien asked, standing in the middle. Their formation was Asher and Sam at the front, while Amelia and Alyssa were in the center, with Vanessa holding the rear. "I need to check something." Asher picked up a bone of a dead monster that was nearby. "Is something wrong with this monster?" Sam asked. "Aren't these the monsters that World Academy's hunters hunted to clear this dungeon?" Damien said. "No," Asher replied. "There was no reason for the people who cleared this dungeon to leave the monsters nearby like this. Every monster was a valuable resource despite the abundance of dungeons present in this world. It wouldn't make sense that they would leave a dead monster corpse here." "This monster doesn't belong to this dungeon," Asher said, his eyes staring further down the dimly lit path. "Really?" Amelia asked as she looked at the few dead monsters around them. Suddenly a thought clicked in her head. "Are these the monsters that they placed inside the dungeon?" Amelia asked. "But why are they dead?" Damien asked. "Fireball." Asher summoned a ball of fire as he lit up their surroundings even more. Currently, Amelia was casting the light ahead of them, but Asher's fireball illuminated the area even more. "Are these burn marks?" Amelia noticed the black stain on the walls. "These are the traps from the rune formations," Asher replied with an indifferent look. "What?" Damien and Sam exclaimed at the same time. "You mean?" Damien began, both he and Sam looking ahead into the dungeon with nervous expressions. "Isn't that too much for a trap, though?" Damien said, looking at the monster's corpse. "This doesn't make sense." Amelia spoke out. "Monsters would sense such a formation easily," she said, bringing their attention to a key piece of information they had forgotten. It was established that monsters could sense the mana from the runes, so they could actively avoid traps made from runes. This was also one of the reasons that made a rune master much weaker in combat. Even if they made a trap, the monster would sense that and avoid it, not unless they mask the rune formation with another, Asher said as he concentrated on his mana sense. Suddenly mana flared around his eyes, making his crimson-red eyes glow. Alyssa could sense Asher's mana. "Don't they notice it?" she wondered as she saw that no one other than her reacted to Asher's mana sense. From the moment her body was healed, her mana sensitivity had increased significantly. She was even able to sense the minute differences in mana when people around her rank used spells. "Did they figure it out so early?" Armin said as he looked at Asher's team. It was one of the clues they had purposely set, and they wanted to see if the students were aware of it. "Well, it's not like Professor Neyman placed any lethal traps for them," Elsa replied, "but they would be out of the race if they get caught in those traps." The third professor said, "That's on them. We can always treat them back to their best conditions." The fourth professor laughed. These guys, Armin thought, both of them were respected professors who were 3-star, just like him and Elsa, but the difference was that they only taught 3rd and 4th year students. They were present here only to grade the two teams as this kind of test was different from what World Academy did before. "But he is sharp." Armin noticed that Asher was incredibly sharp for someone so strong. It was often seen that those gifted in talents as a hunter often neglected such crucial details. It was the experience they gained in their later years that helped them gain the eyes to notice such small details. "Well, The first step to being a good hunter is studying your environment to gather knowledge about the enemies even before you face them. The fourth professor laughed as he said this. Let's focus on the test. Armin reminded both of the old men to concentrate on the test. What do you mean by mask? Damien asked as he crouched to touch the bones of the monster. Asher's eyes moved around as he sensed a faint feeling of mana around the corner of the wall they were about to pass through. He immediately threw the bone toward the wall, creating enough pressure to activate a rune hidden behind it. Boom! An explosion occurred in front of them as Amelia instantly cast a mana barrier to protect them from the flames. Warn us before doing something like this, Amelia said as she looked at Asher. Asher didn't look back, but he started walking toward the spot where the explosion had occurred. Sam, who was beside Asher, had just witnessed an explosion happen in front of him. If not for Amelia's mana barrier, he would have had to use his aura to defend himself at the last second. Even then, he was sure that due to his lack of awareness, he would have gotten a few burns. This would have been enough to stop my mana sense if it wasn't rank A, Asher thought as he looked at the masking runes that were visible to him. It was something that only high-level rune masters could do. But masking the runes was indeed possible. Although it reduced the effect of the original rune that was masked, it was mainly used for security measures against hunters below rank A. It will be difficult to spot them in the middle of a fight. Asher could see that Naaman had used the special walls of this dungeon to increase the masking of the runes. These walls were special as they would slowly absorb the mana around them, making the rune hidden behind the wall. On top of that, it was masked. So unless the wall was impacted by enough pressure, the runes would not activate. Let's go, Asher said as he looked behind him, but as they were moving through the narrow, dim path, Asher could sense the presence of many rank D monsters that were ahead of them. Get ready to fight, Asher told them as he flared his mana. As he said that, all of them became alert as their relaxed eyes turned sharp. As they moved through the path, they arrived at an open area that was quite large. Looking around, they saw various D-rank monsters. Fire wolves. Amelia recognized the beasts. These were special wolf monsters that had a blue flame around their tails, and their eyes shone blue in the dim lighting. You geese fight them, Asher said as he looked at another couple of D-rank monsters lurking in the dungeon's shadows. Don't show your presence, Asher reminded his beast. He had noticed it last time, but his strange beast somehow made a C-rank monster step back in fear. At the time, it happened because Riffer faintly showed his presence as it looked at the mid-C rank monster as its food. But this time, he didn't want the monsters to run away, as it would only waste their time if the monsters avoided them. Okay, Damien replied as he raised his shield. There are a total of 10 fire wolves. Sam alerted them as he noticed the enraged wolves looking at them as they growled. He didn't know why Asher had told them to deal with the fire wolves alone, but he knew that he needed to kill enough monsters to increase his individual scores. That was what was on everyone's mind. Asher had dashed away using his movement technique, but the wolves ignored him, as their attention was focused on the large group of humans before them. Meanwhile, Kevin's team also encountered their first monster, but it was only 7 fire wolves with no other monsters present. It was clear that the difficulty level for Asher and Kevin's team was different, and it had been arranged to make the dungeon equally challenging for both of them. I will handle the fire wolves, Kevin said as he raised his spear. Having reached D rank, he wanted to test his strength against a monster, so he took the lead. Matthew also raised his sword, but, knowing Kevin, he didn't intervene in the fight. Instead, he stuck to the role of defending the mages from a sudden attack. Chain of Depth. Licia used a restricting spell while Leva made a barrier towards their back. Elena used a water spell to amplify the effect of Kevin's lightning element. In a few minutes, Kevin used his aura to defeat multiple fire wolves while Rhea and Matthew managed to kill one themselves. Should I kill more? Matthew wasn't sure. He could have participated and killed more, but Kevin was the team leader, and if there was one thing that Matthew had learned growing up, it was easy to hurt the egos of those with higher standings in society. Unlike Asher, who had an unapproachable aura, Matthew found people like Elena, Kevin, and Leonard much harder to deal with. Although he was talented enough to be a rank 4 student, he was still a person with no background. The last thing he wanted was to make things harder for himself while studying at World Academy. Even right now, his task was to guard Licia, who had taken on the role of casting restricting spells when they were dealing with monsters, and that's why he was sticking to his role. But unlike their team, Asher's team was actively fighting the fire wolves as they had 10 to deal with. While Sam and Damien dealt with 5 fire wolves, Alyssa dealt with the others alone. Ice Lance, Alyssa called, floating in the air. Her abilities are impressive. Sam noticed the Ice Lance falling on one of the fire wolves and instantly killing it. He had thought that the only monster on their team was Asher, but it seemed that Alyssa was someone to watch out for as well. Vanessa dashed toward the wolves that were startled by Alyssa's attack, but except for one, the fire wolves dodged Alyssa's attack. Should I increase the force? Alyssa noticed that the fire wolves were incredibly agile, but she didn't want to show too much during this examination. She wasn't too worried about using her abilities as she knew that there was someone on their team who could easily overshadow her. She looked at Asher, who was walking towards the darker area of the dungeon, as she noticed a couple of beasts around that direction. She had also sensed the monsters, but it was only after she saw Asher walking in that direction that she realized once again how sharp Asher's senses were. This should be enough. Asher noticed the pair of shining blue eyes appearing through the darkness. He had approached the area, and right now, all the professors were wondering how he was going to deal with the monster ahead of him. Asher took out his sword as he saw a unique type of monster coming toward him, a crystal leer, a monster that was twice the size of a human with crystal-like armor all over its body. They had holes around their cheeks that were used to create a fog-like mist that disrupted the vision of others. Their eyes were completely blue as they shone through the darkness they were lurking in. There were 3 crystal leers, and they were a monster that was extremely hard to deal with without a team. Due to their crystal-like armor, it was hard to damage them, but their strange ability to create a mist-like fog and trap their prey inside was their main threat. Only they could see inside the fog, so it was suggested that a group of crystal leers should always be fought with a team, not alone if you couldn't overpower them. Professor Arman, make sure to help him if things go south, the 4th professor said as all of them were watching Asher. Although they found Asher's approach to this problem wrong, they needed to see if he could handle the situation he had created. Suddenly a fog appeared all around Asher as he saw the crystal leers dash toward him. It would be hard for someone to see in that fog, but he didn't need to see them, just by sensing the movement around him. Even without his mana sense, Asher could counter all attacks directed at him, but this time, he wanted to use these monsters to feed them to Rifa, and they were perfect as they somewhat interrupted the vision of the professors. Eat the first monster I kill. Asher raised his aura as it covered his sword, but unlike last time, his sword shined as it absorbed the aura of its owner. Varag, the sound of the crystal's leers could be heard all around Asher, but he twisted his leg to his right. His sword moved incredibly fast as it sliced through a monster that was coming towards him from the right. Host has gained 100 XP. As the other 2 crystal leers sensed one of their own had been killed, they stopped attacking Asher immediately. This was another reason why crystal leers were difficult for hunters to deal with, because they would always try to attack from your blind spots. As Asher killed the first crystal leer, small crystals of armor dropped around him. He immediately used mere steps to jump out of the fog, and he could see the 2 monsters from above. He's good, the 3rd professor praised Asher, but as their attention was on Asher, they failed to notice the hole that appeared around the chest of the monster. Asher noticed that his snake was feeding on the monster, so he immediately shifted the attention of the professors that might have been watching him as he used mere step in midair. One thing that mere step required was a platform for Asher to step on, and that seemed impossible until now, but Asher made a black platform using his rank C shadow control to dash towards the 2 monsters as his sword impaled through the open mouth of one of the crystal leers. Host has gained 100 XP. Instead of stopping, Asher looked at the other crystal leer as blackish chains appeared out of nowhere, pinning the monster to the ground. Asher used his sword, coating it with his aura, and used Swift Strike to slice the monster in half. Host has gained 100 exp. The experience he gained was too low because he was already at C rank, and the monsters he was fighting were at D+ rank, and while Asher finished his fight, he looked at his team, who were dealing with the last two wolves. While he moved back, Kevin's team had already finished defeating the last fire wolf, as Eva created a barrier to negate the fire the wolf threw at them. "Let's go, we should not waste any time," Elena said, looking at Kevin, who removed his spear from the dead wolf. "He is strong," Matthew admitted as he looked at the 5 fire wolves that Kevin had defeated, although Elena and Licia had assisted him. Looking at Kevin's abilities, Matthew knew that Kevin was capable of killing them on his own as well. "Their team is ahead because of the test's difficulty for both of them," the 4th professor said. "It was something that we decided in the meeting. This way, we can see the potential of both teams," Armin replied to the 4th professor. "They need to deal with more monsters until they reach the center of the maze," Elsa said as she looked at both teams that had passed through the first part of this dungeon. In total, there were 4 parts to this test, and the final part was in the center. They needed to deal with 2 more challenges that were in store for both teams. Riffer has consumed a monster. However, it's not enough to increase his level. A higher rank monster is needed. Asher saw the notifications as he walked towards Damien, who was holding the wolf back while Sam and Vanessa were finishing the other. Overall, the passage is understandable, but there are some minor grammatical errors and redundancies that could be improved for clarity and fluency. Here is the proofread version. "Die," Sam shouted as he propelled himself towards the fire wolf using his mana. His spear penetrated the D-rank monster's body, his attack amplified by the use of aura. As Sam turned to observe the fallen wolf, he noticed another, severely wounded but still alive, lunging for his leg with its jaws wide open. "Watch out," Damien shouted, but Vanessa, being closer to Sam, acted quickly, slashing off the wolf's head with her sword. "Oh, thanks," Sam said, looking back to see Vanessa had saved him from a potentially serious injury. "Don't lose focus," Vanessa warned him, turning towards Alyssa, who had already defeated 4 wolves single-handedly using her ice magic. She hadn't needed to utilize her gravity magic for anything other than levitation. "My grading will drop because of this mistake," Sam thought, turning his attention back to the situation. He had made a mistake intentionally, wanting to avoid the spotlight of the rankers. Sam didn't want to draw Jack's attention if he somehow managed to make it into the rankers. Everyone knew that the midterms contributed heavily to the rankings, second only to the end-year exam, which was always a duel. "Wait, what did you fight?" Amelia asked Asher, noticing the spots of blue blood on his armor. "You'll see them ahead, let's go," Asher replied. All of them followed Asher and soon came across several crystal layers. "Crystal layers," Amelia murmured, shocked. Seeing the 3 slain monsters, everyone turned to look at Asher, except Alyssa, who knew that Asher had defeated even stronger monsters before. Did she not know? Alyssa looked at Amelia's expression, puzzled. She had assumed that as his sister, Amelia would have known about Asher's bloodline ability that allowed him to face a C+ rank monster, but she was unaware that it was actually Asher's time dilation skill, not his bloodline ability, that had aided him. Asher stored the monster's remains in his spatial ring, not wanting to leave any trace of Riffer. "Be careful from here," Asher warned, sensing an abundance of rune traps ahead. "Follow my steps," he instructed, his emotionless gaze fixed forward. They were navigating through the dungeon, which had begun to widen, but they maintained a straight line to avoid all the rune traps. Kevin's team, however, got caught in a few traps but managed to escape, thanks to Eva's barrier. Only Asher had such a high level of mana sense that he was able to dodge all the traps. How is he avoiding all the traps? The 3rd professor wondered aloud. "Some of them are hidden so perfectly that even I can't detect them," he admitted. This wasn't how they had planned the test to unfold. They wanted to assess the team's teamwork and their response to unexpected situations. "Why aren't we encountering any monsters?" Amelia wondered aloud. "Perhaps we're on the right path," Damien replied. The maze-type dungeon had many paths, and right now, Asher was leading them down the most difficult but shortest path. His reason was simple: he didn't want to waste too much time fighting ordinary monsters. Suddenly, an explosion echoed throughout the dungeon, causing them all to stop in their tracks. Did a monster trigger a trap? Damien speculated. Asher extended his mana sense but didn't detect any monster near the triggered trap. Are they increasing the difficulty for us? He wondered. Let's see how you react to this, the fourth professor mused, triggering a trap deliberately. The noise attracted nearby monsters. We're about to face a horde of monsters, Asher informed the group, drawing his sword. A group of monsters were racing towards the noise, leaving them with no option but to fight. We need to pick up the pace, Asher stated, flaring his mana. Noticing this, the others did the same. I'm ready. Damien stepped up to stand just behind Asher, with Sam standing behind him near the mages. Should I use my spells? Amelia inquired. Not on me. Use them on these three, Asher instructed, and keep using illumination spells. He then propelled forward using his mana. After a minute of running, they arrived at a fork in the path. They could all feel the vibrations through the walls. How many monsters could cause such vibrations? Damien wondered aloud, making everyone a bit nervous. Are they testing our resolve to fight? Asher considered. He could tell that there weren't enough monsters to cause such vibrations. Instead, it was the work of the runes producing spells that mimicked that effect. Get ready to fight, Asher instructed, focusing his aura on the edge of his sword. They heard a chorus of monstrous roars in the distance. The anticipation of not knowing what kind of monster they were about to face made them a bit nervous, but they were ready for it. Each of them prepared to attack the moment they saw the monsters. What kind of beast is that? Sam asked, confused at the sight of several four-legged beasts with 3 tails and 3 eyes charging toward them. Behind the beasts, 4 massive monsters followed. Are these Clawson monsters? Amelia guessed, looking at the 3 tails and eyes, a characteristic of 2 types of monsters known to live together. The Clawson were the large monsters behind the beasts, which were called sensips. Aim for the knees of the big ones. The beasts are vulnerable to fire spells, Amelia shouted, relaying their weaknesses. Sam heard her and glanced at Damien, who had coated his shield with aura. I'll take the lead, Asher said, confusing Damien. With a technique called mere steps, he dashed toward the group of Clawson monsters. Seeing Asher, 2 massive Clawson conjured claws made of earth elements on their hands. Swift strike, Asher thought, creating another platform in the air with shadow control and dashing towards the nearest Clawson monster. Is he really a first year? The third professor wondered, watching Asher. The monster tried to smash Asher with its hand but was too slow. Host has gained 200 XP. Asher's sword cut through the Clawson monster, the brown-skinned creature slumping to the ground as its head rolled to the side. Spiral Lance, Alyssa chanted, using her ice element spell. Multiple spikes of ice emerged from the ground, impaling the monster's chest from all sides. The monster shrieked in pain, but the sensips all around them were still a significant problem. Even though Asher was dealing with the Clawson monsters, the sensips themselves were challenging to handle. Their 3 eyes improved their vision and field of view. Grant strength. Amelia started chanting as Sam and Damien felt a surge in their power. A sensip lunged at Sam while Damien managed to halt 3 of them with his shield. These beasts are so creepy, Sam said, looking around at the 3-eyed beasts staring at him. Due to the dim light, they couldn't ascertain the exact number of dark gray-skinned sensips. Move, Vanessa shouted, slashing the neck of the sensip in front of Sam. I'll stay in the middle, Sam decided, leaving Vanessa near Damien to fight off the sensips. Alyssa noticed they were getting overwhelmed by the sensips, so instead of killing the next Clawson, she targeted a group of sensips, closing in on Amelia. Should we begin the third part for them as well? The third professor suggested. Let's do that after they've taken care of most of the monsters, Elsa intervened. They were ramping up the difficulty for Asher's team quite significantly. By the way, the first team has already moved past the second part, Elsa said. At that moment, Kevin's team was nearing the center of the dungeon much quicker, but unlike them, they're not taking the fastest route, Armin pointed out. Only Asher's team was on the shortest route to the center. While Kevin and his team were still figuring their way through, proxy connection failed. I wanted to save that artifact for later, Kevin said, looking back at the group of annihilated monsters. Well, we saved a lot of time with that, Elena told Kevin, and we need you to conserve your mana for later, Elena added, looking at Kevin. Yeah, I will support you guys from this point, Kevin affirmed, turning to Matthew and Licia. Okay, Matthew responded, unbothered. They had just encountered multiple wall crawlers in the narrow path, true to their names. These were human-shaped monsters with large limbs that helped them crawl on surfaces. Elena, however, used a fire spell C-rank artifact, annihilating all 15 wall crawlers that were rushing towards them. As they were early D-rank monsters, they all got burnt to death by the artifact's power. We can't use it for now, Elena announced, putting the bracelet inside her spatial ring. Unlike before, the red gem on the bracelet had become dull, indicating that it needed time to recharge. Which path should we choose now? They questioned, looking at 4 different paths. Let's go with the one on the left, Kevin suggested. Elena nodded, and Kevin stepped back, moving with Eva. Meanwhile, Matthew took his place as they delved deeper into the dungeon. How much time do you think it will take for them to reach the center? The third professor inquired. We have sent them on the 2 shortest starting points out of the 4, the fourth professor replied. If they take more than 15 hours to arrive there, I can't say I wouldn't be disappointed, he confessed, adding, after all, this is a cleared dungeon. An uncleared maze dungeon takes weeks to clear. Currently, the boss monster was dead, and the dungeon relic was removed, so the maze dungeon wasn't at its peak difficulty. If it were an uncleared maze dungeon, a lot of conditions would need to be met and, of course, the paths kept changing. All these factors made maze dungeons a nightmare for hunters. Their attention shifted towards Asher's team that had defeated the Sensips and all the Clawsons. Should we slow down a bit? Damien, who was breathing heavily, asked Asher. He had noticed that Asher was the one who had defeated most of the Clawson's monsters, but their whole team would tire out soon if they maintained their current pace. Asher surveyed his team and, apart from him and Alyssa, all of them were breathing roughly. Using so much mana in such a short amount of time wore their bodies out quickly. We can slow down for an hour, Amelia suggested. She proposed this duration because it would take them hours to reach the center and, being a race, they couldn't afford to take a full rest. This was not a dungeon clear mission that would allow them to rest for long hours to recover. Okay, Asher agreed, turning his gaze deeper into the dungeon where various rune traps awaited. He was certain that many traps would be intentionally used on them. As Asher was dodging all the rune traps, the professors in charge would manually activate them. This test was designed to measure a student's wits, resolve, and endurance. They needed to counter the monsters with their weaknesses using the knowledge they had gained at World Academy. Also, the extreme situations resulting from numerous monsters and rune traps could cause them to lose courage and become anxious. Having enough resolve to make it to the center was necessary. And lastly, there was endurance. As this was a race, you needed to traverse the dungeon quickly while maintaining your mana to respond to any situation that arose. Amelia, with the Greville blood coursing through her veins, was the only one who recovered the fastest. During their journey, they encountered various traps of different elements. Should I keep casting the mana barrier? Amelia asked as the barrage of fire arrows ceased. No, I will alert you about traps, Asher replied. This should be enough for them, Asher speculated. The number of traps they had faced in the last 2 hours was quite high, from a barrage of arrows, various spells, to places where the walls collapsed. If Asher hadn't alerted them beforehand, there was a high chance that one of them would have surely been caught in those rune formations. Host has gained 100 EXP. They encountered various groups of monsters, with Asher defeating a few of them and leaving the rest to his team. Host has gained 100 EXP. Host has gained 150 EXP. Host has gained 100 EXP. Ignoring the system notifications, Asher continued moving deeper into the dungeon. At this point, Kevin Whiteheart's team will reach the center first, the third professor announced. observing the progress of the two teams. "Well, we can't interfere from this point on," Elsa added. "Those guys got lucky that the longest path didn't have too many difficult monsters for them," the fourth professor remarked, glancing at Kevin's team. "Well, they still need to pass the final part in the center of the maze as well," he added. They watched as Asher's team fought various types of monsters. "It's been 8 hours already," Damien declared, finishing off the last monster with his shield. "We should be near the center," Vanessa added. "Hope so. We need to fetch the medallion quickly," Sam chimed in, leaning on his spear. The team had grown somewhat more comfortable around each other, except for Alyssa, who kept her distance. She detested all elite families, but she tolerated her presence in Asher's team. This was the least she thought she could do for Asher, as he had helped her greatly for reasons unknown to her. Alyssa's dull eyes fell on Asher, whose armor was stained with blood. Is he trying to hide his strength as well? She wondered. She was well aware of Asher's capabilities, and even now, as he seemed to be at the peak of D rank somehow, Alyssa speculated that Asher could potentially complete this race on his own. It was rare for a swordsman to have so much mana, but his unwavering endurance reflected in his physical and mental strength. Throughout the ordeal, Asher hadn't sat down once while his entire team, including Alyssa, had rested for at least 5 minutes. 1 hour away, Asher could sense that the center of the maze was near. A significant amount of mana gathered at that place. Is that the final test? He pondered. This has taken longer than needed, he thought, studying the path ahead. We will run at full speed from here, Asher instructed, turning to his team. What about the rune traps? Damien inquired. Don't worry about them, Asher replied. Knowing Asher, Damien got up. Asher was the team leader, and they had been following his decisions so far. Vanessa avoided questioning Asher directly, so she would only discuss their plans with Sam and Damien or with Amelia and Alyssa depending on the situation. Even though other students might have felt awkward among elite families' kids, Vanessa was herself from the D. Marcus family, so she felt comfortable conversing with them. Well, you should go forward, I will handle the rear, Vanessa told Sam as she moved towards Alyssa. They fell into their formation, with all eyes on Asher. This should be enough, Asher announced, flaring his mana as he picked up a few rocks, and one by one, Asher started throwing the stones he had picked up, each coated with his aura, and most of them hit the traps, activating them. Suddenly, a wave of large explosions and triggered spells washed over them. The impact and noise of the traps were felt by everyone behind Asher as they observed the spectacle unfolding before them. Isn't that number of traps a bit too much? Sam questioned, an awkward smile on his face. I agree, Damien replied, lifting his shield protectively, looking at Asher, who was now dashing forward. He followed suit, as did every other team member. As they traversed the paths, they noticed a few dead monsters scattered around. Was he picking all those stones earlier for this? Sam mumbled, recalling how he'd seen Asher collect stones and put them into his spatial ring without understanding the reasoning behind it. Currently, Asher's mana was flowering as he threw powerfully charged projectiles, each coated in his aura. It was a practical application of a new skill he'd learned from his sword art. Though it was fundamentally a defensive skill, with a little modification, it could be used in a way that allowed Asher to strengthen an object with his aura, even when he was no longer in contact with it. After running straight for 40 minutes, hearing various traps going off around them, the team was astounded by Asher's accuracy in pinpointing the traps. Asher was currently using a significant amount of mana to increase his mana sensitivity significantly. As they neared the center, Asher spotted a group of beasts similar to the sensips they had first encountered. Rather than wasting time, Asher dashed forward, not even bothering to draw his sword. Asher used his hand, coated with his aura, to seize the beast by its jaw and slam it into the ground, killing it instantly. Shadow bind, he spoke, and chains materialized, strangling all the other sensips surrounding him, ignoring the shrieking monsters as they were strangled to death. Asher turned his attention to the center of the dungeon. So, it's behind this gate, Asher declared, reaching the center of the dungeon. While Asher and his team had just reached the center, Kevin's team had arrived 15 minutes earlier, but they were still unable to secure the medallion. The reason? The third professor standing in their path. You all are quite talented, but to take this medallion, you need to get past me, he told them. How are we supposed to take on an S or above rank hunter? Rio asked, irritation evident in her voice. However, the professor ignored her comment. This test can't be impossible, Kevin said, eyeing the two medallions positioned behind the professor. They had been trying to bypass or attack the professor for the past 15 minutes, but they had not succeeded in securing the medallion. Let's not lose hope, Elena shouted, grabbing everyone's attention. They have still not arrived, so we're still ahead of them. Elena pointed at the fourth professor, silently observing them, surveying the four gates surrounding the room. It was evident that both teams needed to bypass the professors somehow and secure one of the two medallions. Section Y broken bar currency F degrees middle dot F registered. The issue, however, was that they were merely D rank hunters, and the professors before them were SS rank hunters, significantly more powerful than them. They can't use their skills, so use that to our advantage, Eve reminded them. She had noticed various patterns the third professor followed while impeding their progress. Right, he is only using physical attacks, Kevin realized, sparking an idea. Hey, can you grab his attention for a second? Kevin asked Matthew. Okay, Matthew responded as he gripped his sword. I will move after your attack, Matthew told Licia in a polite tone. Even amidst the battle, Matthew was conscientious about how he addressed his teammates. Unlike him, everyone on his team had a background substantial enough to deal with an orphan like him. Licia nodded at him, preparing a series of spells, while Elena unleashed another fire spell, followed by blades of wind. The professor easily dodged them all. The third professor smiled as he watched the first-year students desperately try to bypass him. Well, you need to show your strength, he thought to himself. Kevin's team had used a plethora of artifacts to clear through the monsters. Using Eva's barrier, they managed to overcome most of the rune traps, but Elena and Matthew still suffered a few hits. Despite all this, all four professors concluded that their team needed further testing so they could score them individually. The dungeon segment was the only part where they would be graded, so they needed to be strict with their evaluation. These flimsy attacks won't harm me, the third professor taunted Matthew, hoping to provoke him. Matthew didn't respond, merely slashing at the professor, who deftly dodged again. Kevin's eyes shone blue as he flared his mana, alerting the third professor to his presence. Elena, use an earth element spell when I reach there, Kevin whispered to Elena, who nodded in understanding. She grasped Kevin's intention and focused on the opportunity. I will help him, Rhea declared, dashing towards where Matthew stood. Take this. Matthew swung his sword as he ducked, but the professor suddenly caught him and flung him into the wall. What? Kevin halted midway as he saw Matthew sent flying into the wall. Did you think I wouldn't attack, only defend? The third professor smirked, enjoying their shock. Seeing them halt, the fourth professor shook his head. These guys aren't working as a team, he said, critiquing their teamwork. They weren't employing their strengths as a team, instead focusing on supporting one member and relying on him to seize the medallion. While this was not inherently a poor strategy, executing it required exceptional teamwork, something Kevin's team was sorely lacking. Matthew carefully followed Kevin's orders as the team leader while Licia struggled to synchronize with Elena and Eva, and Rhea, who should have been working with Matthew, was instead coordinating with Elena. They still need a lot of time to become proper hunters, the fourth professor mused, shaking his head. It was about time the third professor lessened the difficulty and allowed them to take the medallion. So, how are we supposed to get past you? Kevin asked. We told you guys to form a team for a reason, the third professor hinted. Is it our teamwork? Eve murmured, realization dawning on her. Hey, I have a plan, Eva called them as Kevin went to assist Matthew. The third professor allowed them to regroup and strategize once again. Let's see if they learned anything, he mumbled to himself. Have you noticed that the professor has not moved from that area the whole time we fought him? Eva asked, to which Kevin nodded. I wanted to take advantage of that, so I sent Matthew first, Kevin replied. Recognizing their mistakes, Eva devised a new plan and discussed it with the entire team. Initially, they hadn't thought it through while battling the professor, but now she knew what needed to be done to seize the medallion. So, you guys are ready, the third professor announced, but it seems the other team has arrived as well, he added as the fourth gate to the boss room opened. Emerging from it was a solitary young man with crimson-red eyes. Don't lose focus, we should concentrate on obtaining the medallion, Kevin reminded them, and they all nodded in agreement. On the other side of the gate, damn, what was that spell? Damien was taken aback by Asher's magic. It was the spell I told you about, Amelia reminded him. Sam, clueless about their conversation, inferred they were discussing the mage exam that took place a few days prior. Following Asher, they saw Kevin's team in a confrontation with an old man donning a robe adorned with the World Academy emblem. So, you guys have finally arrived, the fourth professor addressed them. This is the final test in this dungeon, he explained. Get past me and secure that medallion, he instructed, smiling. Will they make the same mistakes as them? He pondered, just as the other team was mobilizing around Kevin. This team had Asher, who was even more talented than Kevin Whiteheart. Is he a professor? Damien questioned, noting the symbol of the World Academy on the man's robe. What kind of test is this? Vanessa asked, looking at the other team engrossed in their battle with the opposing professor. Her question, however, went unanswered. Get ready, Asher commanded, brandishing his sword. Treat him as a monster we need to kill, Asher declared, his face indifferent. That's too harsh. I'm a beloved professor that all your seniors adore, the fourth professor quipped. I ask grant strength, Sifilm. Amelia activated her Tier 2 spell, a shorter version of the original Sifilm spell, a Tier 3 spell. Their entire team, including Asher, felt a surge in their power. This feels nice, Vanessa noted as she experienced the increase in strength. While Amelia felt weak from the extensive use of her mana, she significantly boosted her team's power to face the professor. Host's strength and agility are boosted by 10%. Asher observed the effect of Amelia's spell. It was more potent for the others as they were D rank or below. As they prepared to move, they noticed Rhea holding onto the medallion as the professor was overwhelmed by Matthew and Kevin from both sides, with Elena and Licia providing cover. Eva used her barrier magic to limit the professor's movements. Well, you guys need to exit the dungeon now, the third professor announced. The next second, Rhea tossed the medallion to Kevin, who immediately caught it. Let's go, Kevin shouted. He glanced at Asher's team, which had just arrived, as they exited the room. Looks like you guys are behind them now, the fourth professor observed, smiling, but in the next instant, he stepped back as Asher's sword swung for his neck. Resorting to lethal attacks, the fourth professor said, looking into Asher's eyes. Damn, these eyes remind me of that old monster, he thought, reminded of Nathaniel Greville as he observed Asher's indifferent gaze. Asher didn't hesitate, swinging his sword at the professor again. The gap in skill between them was considerable. Asher's movements were easily dodged by the professor, yet even he could see that Asher's swordsmanship was on another level compared to the other students. Even final year students had flaws in their movements, but he could not identify such shortcomings in Asher. He is making the same mistake as them, the professor thought. Just like Kevin's team, Asher was also charging in alone. Let's go, Damien yelled as Sam and Vanessa moved to support Asher. Meanwhile, Alyssa hovered above, eyeing the medallion. She raised her hand to attract the medallion, but she noticed a rune formation that neutralized her gravity magic's influence on the medallion. Seeing that gravity magic was not working, she changed her target. Lance, Alyssa commanded, summoning various ice lances to momentarily trap the professor, creating an opening for Asher. While Sam tried to sneak out to reach the medallion, the professor disappeared and reappeared to halt Asher's advance, redirecting his own attack towards Damien. Do you think SS rank is a joke? The fourth professor asked them. He was hell-bent on causing them to lose 5 minutes, just as the other team had wasted an entire 16 minutes attempting to secure the medallion. Swift strike. Asher calmly dived toward the professor, who managed to grab his hand. Go rest for a few seconds. He flung Asher away, but at that moment, Asher created a mid-air platform to perform mere steps. Using all his mana, Asher made a dash for the medallion, but the professor caught on to his plan. Not today. He extended his hand to snatch Asher once again. Aura shield. Asher twisted his body and swung his sword. He activated a new skill that he had learned from his sword art. As he swung his sword, a thin aura shield materialized in its path, changing his open hand into a fist. The professor attempted to break through the strange aura that had materialized in front of him, but at the same time, Asher created another platform in an instant to use mere steps again. In response, the professor vanished from his spot, reappearing beside Asher in an attempt to halt him. Aura shield, Asher declared, once again swinging his sword. The shield materialized again. But Asher's sword changed direction in midair this time. Swift strike. Asher's sword passed through the aura shield he had created easily, aiming straight for the professor. The professor found this skill a bit strange as Asher's sword passed through what appeared as a materialized aura, but it was not enough to catch him off guard. Useless. The professor used the back of his hand to deflect Asher's sword. The strength behind the professor's blow was enough to cause Asher to lose his grip, sending the sword flying. Shadow bind. Asher raised his hand, and multiple chains appeared as black energy surged from the ground, causing the professor to smile at Asher's attempt. Use your team. You cannot win alone, he advised Asher as he shattered the chains with a mere flick of his fingers. The test has ended. Professor Zakram, Armin suddenly intervened, halting the test. What do you mean? The fourth professor asked Armin, confusion etched on his face. They have the medallion already. Armin pointed at Alyssa, who floated down gracefully, clutching the medallion in her hand. What? Professor Zakram blurted out, a confused look on his face. Ha 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 ha, Zakram, you're getting old. You didn't even notice this young man's trick. The third professor laughed as he observed him. Instead of asking them, Zakram looked at the spot where the medallion was placed, situated above a runic formation that prohibited spatial magic or other spells from passing through it. It was designed in such a way that the medallion could only be taken by physical touch. Zakram's eyes widened as he noticed a black sword embedded in the ground where the runic formation was present. Blink. Asher recited the spatial spell, and the sword disappeared from the ground, reappearing in his hand. Armin noticed Asher's usage of the spell, but Blink was a basic space element spell that was deemed safe to use, so he didn't speak out against it. Let's go, Asher declared, turning back to his companions. Alyssa tossed the medallion towards Asher, who caught it effortlessly. Well, it seems like I've been outsmarted by him, Zakram muttered, confusion still present in his voice. But how did a normal sword manage to destroy the runic formation? Zakram asked Armin. To destroy a runic formation, unless it was made of highly complicated runes, one would need aura or destructive spells. Such formations would then break easily. Naaman hadn't used any such runes, as they weren't necessary for such a task. I sensed a faint hint of aura on that sword when I saw it land on the runic formation, the third professor mentioned. As the sword landed on the runic formation, it shattered it, and immediately Alyssa used the blink spell to retrieve the medallion. That was when Armin halted the test, as they had successfully acquired the medallion. Aura? Zakram echoed. Yes, I don't know how though, the third professor replied. Using aura outside the body was fine, and even the stones that Asher had coated with aura were understandable if he had trained his aura enough to sustain it. However, with the sword, he needed to maintain that aura to the tip, to destroy the runic formation. It was precisely this controlled aura placement that baffled everyone. Did his grandfather teach him that technique? Zakram questioned. Well, we can't really ask him that, the third professor replied. Anyway, I'll just blame Naaman for this, Zakram decided, shaking his head. It wasn't as if he didn't know where Asher's sword was headed. What he hadn't expected was that it would result in breaking the runic formation. Why not accept that an SS rank hunter got outsmarted by a D rank hunter? The third professor joked. Both of them were professors who only taught the senior year students. Zakram specifically taught fourth year students, and occasionally, he would instruct the third year students as well. In the fourth year, Zakram was well known among students for one thing: his strategies to clear the dungeons. The first 3 years at World Academy were dedicated to teaching students various aspects about mana, instilling knowledge needed as a hunter. The fourth year, however, was strictly for implementing what they had learned over the past 3 years and improving it before graduating from World Academy. This was why he was assigned to grade the two teams. "Well, we have judged their capabilities enough," Zakram stated, letting go of the issue. "The real race will begin now," Zakram declared with a smile. The exam was never meant to be fair for both teams. At that moment, Kevin and his team were retracing the lengthy path they had previously taken. The only difference was that some of the monsters from the other path had arrived, lured by the smell of monsters' blood, and they had to fight their way through. "We should hurry up," Elena suggested, creating a small spiral of flame that obliterated many monsters. Currently, Kevin's team were a full minute ahead of Ash's team. They hadn't expected Ash's team to seize the medallion so quickly, but even so, none of them were taking any chances. "Kevin, you conserve your mana. We'll clear the dungeon for you," Elena reminded them of the strategy they had planned outside the dungeon when they learned of the test they were to undergo. "Okay," he agreed, watching Matthew take the lead. Meanwhile, outside the dungeon, Xander awaited the team's emergence. His eyes scanned the course they had prepared for the race. As night fell, he floated in the air, eagerly waiting for the teams to surface. "Hey, isn't that Xander D. Marcus?" Two masked men passing through the forest paused as they noticed a man levitating in the air. "Why are the people from World Academy here?" one of them grumbled, annoyance etched onto his face. "Ignore them, I'll maintain my invisibility for now. We need to move 500 km from here," the other advised. "Ha, we got lucky on the first mission," the other replied. "I diaresis I circumflex plus minus eth inverted question mark d I circumflex plus minus sn? I circumflex 1/2 question mark vertical bar and tilde Their appearance was rough, and their bodies bore several healed injuries, with only a few scars left. "We have 8 more destinations left," a voice in their rear communicated. "But really, are you sure about this?" one of them questioned. "Even though I consider myself a psychopath, I wouldn't do this," he remarked. "Don't waste time. If you miss the timings by even 2 seconds, the next destination might be your grave," the voice in their rear reminded them. They resumed their journey, and Xander didn't notice them as they were already 10 km away from where Xander was hovering. The only reason they spotted him in the air was because of the overwhelming mana presence they felt from Xander, an SS rank hunter. He wasn't suppressing his mana, ensuring no monster would dare approach this territory by sensing his imposing presence. 5 hours went by, and the sun rose. Xander observed the first team exiting the dungeon. It was Kevin Whiteheart's team, so they came out first. Xander noted as he suppressed his presence. "Let's see who will win," he mused, disappearing from his spot. Outside the dungeon, "Did we arrive first?" Rio asked, gasping for breath. Not only her, everyone except Kevin, had exhausted a lot of mana to quickly traverse the dungeon. "Where is the medallion pointing?" Eva asked Kevin. "It's pointing towards the north," he answered. They were taking a 2-minute break because everyone on the team was recovering their mana. "Take out the mana recovery artifact. It's time to use them," Eva instructed, and everyone produced a ring. These rings were given to Kevin by Relin, and he had distributed them among his teammates. A staff member appeared soon after they activated the rings to boost their mana recovery. "Congratulations, you're the first team to arrive here," he announced. His words ignited hope in their eyes, indicating that they had a head start in the race. "Follow the direction of the medallion to reach the finish line," he guided them. "How far is the finish line?" Elena inquired, but the staff member shook his head. "We can't tell you that," he responded. "We should start moving in that direction," Kevin proposed, and everyone nodded in agreement. They began traversing the forest, and 7 minutes after they embarked, Ash's team arrived at the dungeon's exit. Ha, ha, Damien was panting heavily, using his shield as support to stand. Why did we encounter so many monsters? He complained, visibly annoyed. Everyone on the team, except Alyssa and Asher, were in a similar condition. Asher emerged, his armor drenched in blood, just like the rest of his team. And why the hell did they put early C-rank monsters in the dungeon for? He protested. Asher looked at Damien but didn't reveal that he had deliberately chosen the path and activated all the rune traps to attract all the monsters. This number of monsters should be enough. Asher thought about Riffa. Since acquiring Riffa, he had decided to use this opportunity to hunt as many monsters as possible. However, even in this dungeon, he and Alyssa could only hunt down 5 early C-rank monsters, which they killed effortlessly. Your team has arrived second, so I advise you guys to follow the direction shown on the medallion, the staff member said, looking at Asher. So, they arrived before us. Damien kicked the ground, looking annoyed. Damien stored his shield back into his spatial ring. I don't think we can keep up with you guys at full speed to catch up with them, Damien admitted, glancing at Sam who was just as exhausted as he was. You geese can proceed at your own pace. I'll go ahead, Asher replied, flaring his mana. His objective in the dungeon was already complete, and he was confident that their grading was finished already due to the number of monsters he had forced them to confront while exiting the dungeon. I will go after them, Asher said, vanishing from his spot as he used his movement technique. Wait, he has the medallion, Amelia shouted. Don't worry, he already gave me a tracking device, Damien reassured, tossing a device to Amelia that displayed Asher's location. And it will be much faster for him to go alone, Damien said, and Amelia understood the point he was trying to make. Well, we should move as well then, Amelia told Damien as she looked around and found Alyssa was missing. Where did she go? Amelia asked Vanessa. Throughout the time in the dungeon, Alyssa hadn't uttered a single word. She would only occasionally assist them or focus on killing the monsters. The only one on the team who had conversed with her was Vanessa, who would occasionally strike up a conversation with everyone except Asher. She went ahead the moment he did, Vanessa said, noticing Alyssa use her gravity magic to move towards the forest. Ah, okay, Amelia replied. Far ahead on the path, Kevin was running with his team trailing behind him. Did the direction change again? Elena asked as Kevin changed course. Yeah, Kevin said as he leapt over a bunch of vines. The rocky terrain will start from here, Eva informed them, noticing the change in their environment, as they didn't know the exact final location where they needed to place the medallion. All they could do was follow the direction it indicated. While traveling, they noticed a bunch of broken trees and dried land. Do you think we'll encounter any monsters? Licia asked Elena. Maybe. But I'm not sure. Let's keep our guards up though, Elena said as she spread her mana sense to continuously check if anyone other than them was nearing. At that moment, Elena was pleased that they were in the lead and that Kevin had sufficient mana that would aid them later, but she didn't let down her guard yet. It was too early for them to think they had one. After all, such premature celebration had backfired too many times for her to not learn her lesson. She was not going to underestimate Asher, so she crafted a strategy that could lead them to victory with Eva. Start it, Xander said, observing the race with the other professors who had just left the dungeon after Asher's team. Okay, Else responded as she tapped her ID bracelet. They were looking at the rocky terrain, which was part of the race, but they had created a special path for themselves. Elena, who was running while using the mana at her feet, suddenly stopped as she noticed Kevin halt. What happened? Elena asked Kevin. It changed direction, but it's pointing at this mountain, Kevin said. Elena approached and took a look at the medallion, confirming Kevin's observation. Do we need to go over it? Elena queried, eyeing the small mountain in front of them. No. Look, a path is opening, Eva pointed out, noticing a faint light in the middle of the mountain. Do we have to enter that? Rio asked. It seems like it, Eva responded. Let's go then, Kevin decided, leading the group inside. Meanwhile, 5 kilometers behind them, Asher was navigating through the forest, Noticing signs of recent footsteps, from the corner of his eye, he spotted many stealth drones following him at all times. He assumed these were the drones being used to monitor this test. "Is this the speed of a D-rank hunter?" one of the staff members questioned as they watched Asher move through the forest terrain without pausing once. Xander didn't react much as he was preoccupied with observing the complex movement technique Asher was using. Asher's figure would disappear from one place and appear at another. It was almost like he was using a spatial spell, but Xander could see the intricacies of the movement technique Asher was utilizing. But trailing him, Alyssa was also traveling at high speed. Unlike Asher, she was using her gravity magic to accelerate herself. Yet, neither of them was utilizing their full capabilities. In 2 minutes, Asher exited the forest. He surveyed the mountainous path and the unusual opening that the medallion pointed at. "Is this the path they created?" Asher guessed as he entered the cave, which was starkly different inside. Despite being illuminated, the terrain was filled with various rune traps visible to the naked eye. It was designed to force people to slow down, but they ended soon. Asher avoided them and traveled towards the narrow road that could only allow one person to run on it at a time. But as he was passing through the road at the end, numerous sensips appeared. Noticing Asher, Vaewag, the beasts roared upon seeing him. Asher looked at the cages that had opened when he started running on the narrow path. So they've already passed through the trap. Asher observed the other empty cages that had been opened by Kevin's team. Asher eyed the 5 sensips as his gaze landed on them. Shadow bind, he thought in his head, and chains erupted from the ground, strangling the monsters. Right then, he didn't want to waste any time. "I should increase my speed now," Asher said as he flared his mana. At the moment, he was only using his movement technique to maintain his speed. "Host has gained 100 EXP, host has gained 100 EXP. 5 such notifications flashed in front of him, but Asher ignored them. Asher suddenly disappeared from the footage, leaving Xander and the other professors watching in suspense. Is he trying to brute force through the traps? Naaman frowned. The traps were designed to slow them down and to make them choose their paths carefully. Asher was only a kilometer away from Kevin's group as he noticed the path filled with rune traps. The only way to cross it was to go through the narrow paths or a single rope while under the threat of encountering monsters. Boom, boom, explosions erupted as Asher passed through them, wrapping his body in aura and negating the shockwaves emitted from those rune traps. His current speed was enough to evade the traps, but doing so required his full concentration. Asher tilted his head as he saw a fire arrow whiz past him. "What is this kid doing?" Naaman observed Asher's reckless maneuver through the rune traps. "Shouldn't we stop him?" Armin looked at Xander, but Xander remained silent, not answering them. Meanwhile, Kevin was dodging lava traps around him, and the others behind him were doing the same. "Those monsters slowed us down a lot," Kevin said as he swung his spear, taking down a D-rank monster. His eyes were glowing blue. He had stopped conserving his mana and was leading them instead of Matthew, who was quite exhausted by now. Kevin jumped up, spinning his spear to deflect stone daggers that sprang from the rune traps. He looked at a monster eyeing him and hurled his spear, a rank B weapon. In an instant, the spear decimated the monster and destroyed the ground around it. Kevin landed and jumped onto a rock, crossing the path first. "I should save this for later," Kevin muttered, looking at the blue bracelet he was wearing. Boom! He heard an explosion, and everyone, including him, looked in the direction from which they had come. After a few seconds, they saw Asher emerging from there. How did he get here so fast? Kevin wondered, frowning. "Kevin," Elena shouted, catching his attention. "Follow the plan," she reminded him, and Kevin nodded. Even though he wasn't keen on the idea, he decided to go along with Elena and Eva's strategy. "I will win this race for us," Kevin resolved as he flared his mana, which was nearing that of a mid-D rank hunter. He immediately dashed towards the exit, holding the medallion in his hand, leaving Asher behind with his team. Asher watched Kevin disappear. He looked around as Elena and Eva crossed the lava path, with the others following suit. "Use the terrain to our advantage. We need to stall as much as we can," Elena instructed. She knew they couldn't stop Asher entirely, but she just needed to delay him long enough for Kevin to win. He had the perfect affinity for this type of test, lightning affinity, which made him the fastest and the second rank among all first-year students. Asher observed them, noticing the lava pool in front of him. Barrier magic, Eva chanted, erecting a barrier to ensure nobody could get affected by the spell Asher had demonstrated in the mage test. Licia, try to restrain him, while I push him back, Elena instructed. Meanwhile, Matthew and Rhea raised their swords, standing as the last line of defense. This boy is too reckless, Zakram said, glancing at Naaman, who couldn't believe anyone would dare navigate the rune traps so recklessly. I purposely made them non-lethal for this part of the test. He must have recognized it, Naaman mumbled, but he's cornered now, and the White Heart boy hasn't used his lightning affinity till now either, Zakram added. Well, let's watch what he does, Elsa said, curious to see how Asher would handle the situation. Blink, Asher disappeared from his spot and reappeared behind Elena, who was standing at the back. His indifferent gaze fell on Elena. While everyone was puzzled by what had happened, Elena sensed a presence behind her, but she was too late to react. Before she could turn her head, Asher raised his leg and kicked her, breaking through Eva's barrier and sending her flying to a wall far to her left. Everyone turned around, looking at Asher in disbelief. How did you learn that teleportation spell? Eva stuttered, her eyes wide as she guessed what Asher had just done. You don't need to know, Asher replied, disappearing from his spot. Eva immediately raised her guard, but Asher's target was behind her. It was Matthew, who raised his sword, but to no avail. He tried to stop Asher's attack, but even while blocking, the force behind Asher's strike was too much for him to handle. Asher was about to push even more, but he halted as he sensed a particular person approaching them. She can handle them now, Asher thought, using the mere steps technique to exit the place and follow the direction that the medallion was indicating. What happened here? Alyssa, who was using gravity magic to accelerate herself in the air, looked around. Broken ground, dead monsters, destroyed cages. No matter what, she couldn't comprehend how all this had happened. The traps that Asher had triggered affected the whole route, breaking the path here and there, but Alyssa was fine as she floated above. Found them, Alyssa muttered as she sensed the mana of multiple people. At that moment, Asher sensed Alyssa's presence while he was chasing after Matthew. Knowing she was there, he didn't need to waste time anymore. Mere steps, Asher disappeared from his spot, and Eva looked in his direction with a worried look on her face. She tried to create a barrier to delay Asher a bit, but in an instant, she felt that all her barriers, which were protecting her, had been destroyed as well. She looked back, as she felt a massive burden on her body. The result of the gravity magic Alyssa was using. Eva, he escaped, Rhea shouted to alert Eva. Should I? Rhea started, but Eva shook her head. Kevin will have to handle the rest. We need to hold our positions, Eva reminded her while she flared her mana to counter Alyssa. But the difference between E+ and D rank was quite significant. It didn't help her much. Eva glanced at the flame blast near one of the walls, and she felt the mana of a D rank hunter, so she was fine. Eva breathed a sigh of relief as she saw Elena, who was flaring all her mana. Elena created a blast to remove the rubble around her as she looked at Alyssa, who was floating in the opposite direction, and Alyssa did the same. Kill her, avenge your mother. Voices in Alyssa's head started to scream, you will die just like your mom. The voices kept bothering her as Alyssa's eyes locked onto Elena's blue eyes and blonde hair. Alyssa clenched her hand so hard that blood started to drip, but she controlled herself. It's not time yet, Alyssa whispered to herself. I should help him first. Alyssa remembered meeting Asher's gaze once before he left, and she knew what she needed to do. Ice cage. Alyssa used a lot of her mana to create a cage around the entire room with her ice magic. Unlike Asher, Elena didn't show any reaction to Alyssa. I circumflex Sedilla M for Elena. Alyssa's existence was not worth her trouble. After all, she was doomed to die sooner or later, and knowing that, Elena didn't consider Alyssa a threat. She doesn't care, you are not worth it. The voices kept getting louder. Alyssa could see that in their eyes they didn't care about the suffering Alyssa had experienced throughout her life because of their families. "One day, I will have my revenge," Alyssa muttered, but nobody knew anything, as she was wearing her mask that covered half her face. The hatred she carried was not small enough to disappear after defeating the people in front of her. She looked down as she saw Elena summoning multiple fire vortexes to counter her ice magic, but it was useless. She could defeat Elena, but that was not her goal. She just needed to trap them here for some time. There was no need for her to show her true strength. "Restrain." Licia raised her hand as she looked at Alyssa. This was the first time Licia had faced Asher in a fight, but she was relieved she was not his target. In the representative tournament, she had the worst impression of Asher when she saw him beat Alan Asteria in a brutal manner, but when she looked back and saw his emotionless crimson-red eyes, she understood why people avoided him. Even when charging at Matthew, Licia aimed to cast a spell on Asher to stop him, but she was scared when she felt the killing intent from Asher. Both of them are dangerous. Licia was getting the same feeling of killing intent from Alyssa as well, but this was something that only she could feel. After all, this was the bloodline ability that ran through all the Halcyon royal family's descendants with the golden eyes. Out in the rocky terrain, a white-haired young man was running towards a specific direction. "It's a cliff," Kevin noticed as he looked in the direction he needed to go. He turned his head to the left and noticed a bridge, but it was a bit far, and it would cost him many seconds to take the longer route. "I have time." Kevin was talking to himself when he felt a presence behind him. Did he already defeat them all? Kevin said. He was confident that this presence belonged to Asher Greville, and his suspicion was confirmed when he saw the crimson-red eyes looking in his direction. Asher noticed Kevin, as he used mere steps to close the distance between them, but as he was nearing, Kevin started running straight towards the cliff, and in the next moment, Asher noticed sparks of electricity appearing around Kevin, as his white hair started to flutter in the air, so he learned it. Asher recognized the technique that Kevin was using, lightning aura, although not everyone mixed elements with their aura as it didn't benefit them and it damaged their bodies if they were not careful. The lightning element was different. It was an advanced element that helped its user not only increase their physical potential but also their senses, but the effects became entirely different if the element was integrated into your aura. Kevin could do it because he had the bloodline ability that made his body perfect for learning lightning aura, and the legacy of spear art that Farnes Kalmort had made. In the next instant, the distance between them doubled as Kevin's speed increased, and he went straight towards the cliff. "I need to reach the finish line fast," Kevin said. His eyes shone blue, and multiple sparks of lightning started appearing around his body. Right now, Kevin had become comparable to a C-rank hunter, but it was only possible because of the artifact he was wearing. It was one of those rare artifacts, just like Alyssa's ring, that boosted and affected their mastery with specific elements, but even with that, lightning aura was a special technique that Kevin could not use for long. Right now, he was gambling it all on the fact that he would reach the finish line in time. He ran towards the edge of the cliff, crouched down, tilted his body forward, and jumped. In the next moment, Asher saw that Kevin had already crossed the cliff. "This generation is truly talented," Zakram said as he looked at the screen before him. Everyone was focused on spectating the final struggle between Asher and Kevin, but right now, it was obvious that Kevin was in the lead. The lightning aura he used made even Zakram a bit surprised. Xander was silent the whole time, from the moment he saw Asher use the Tier 2 blink spell. Using space magic wasn't forbidden, and this was the reason they had stored those books in the restricted section, but he still didn't want a talent like Asher to venture too much into the space element. But Xander didn't have the power to stop him either. "Isn't this race over?" one of the staff members said as they noticed the distance between Asher and Kevin and the final location where they needed to place the medallion to complete the race. But something unexpected happened, as Asher slowed down a lot and stopped as he looked at Kevin. "What is he doing?" Zakram said. Even Xander frowned as he saw Asher give up chasing Kevin, who was increasing the distance between them. Blink. Asher disappeared from his place as he crossed the cliff in an instant. Asher flared his mana to the very peak of C rank, but his mana concealing ability made it appear like a D+ rank core. In the next instant, Asher disappeared as he chased after Kevin using mere steps, but this time, each place Asher stepped on, a small crater would appear due to the impact of his mana. His speed increased so much that the distance between them began closing in, and Kevin noticed it. He looked back and saw Asher nearing him. "Damn it," Kevin muttered as he pushed himself even more, but the strain on his body was increasing. His mana was depleting at a high rate, but he looked ahead, and at the far end, he spotted a big stone with the emblem of World Academy visible on it. It was the finish line, where all he needed to do was put the medallion in and win. "I can do this," Kevin said, using his lightning element even more as his mana kept depleting. Asher's indifferent eyes looked at Kevin, who was trying his all to win the race. "Shadow bind," Asher muttered. Kevin immediately sensed a surge of mana beneath his feet and turned his body to use his rank B spear to deflect the black chains. He glared at Asher, who used the spell against him. Kevin wasn't ready to fight a person who could use both mage and weapon art, as nobody had taught him to do so. It was impossible for a person to have aura and be a mage at the same time. Lightning slash. Kevin swung his spear while deflecting the chains and sent an arc of lightning towards Asher. He turned immediately, as he couldn't waste time fighting Asher. Asher brought out his sword and cut through the lightning slash that Kevin had used against him. His sword absorbed the aura in the attack, and Asher could feel it. In the next instant, Asher used a surge of mana to close the distance between them even more. How much mana does he have? Kevin sensed that Asher was much closer than he had thought. Just a little more, Kevin thought as he saw the finish line just 200 meters ahead. Kevin tightened his grip on the medallion as he raised his hand to put the medallion in a circular cavity on the stone in front of him. "Do you think you can win?" Asher asked, as he closed the distance enough to run beside him. Kevin spun his spear at Asher, but before he could do so, Asher disappeared. Kevin looked ahead, but all he could see was the palm of Asher's left hand, which grabbed his face. "No!" Kevin shouted as he flared the lightning around his body. Doing so, the entire nano armor around Asher's hand got burnt, but his hands were fine as the difference between their aura was too significant, and in the end, Kevin felt the strength in his body leave him as Asher slammed him on the ground. Kevin's eyes saw the finish line that was only 20 meters away, but he couldn't do anything as he felt his consciousness fade away. "Ha ha, am I really watching some first-year students?" Zakram laughed, but everyone else in the room was surprised. The rest of the staff were just shocked and they couldn't believe what had happened. Overpowering someone with a lightning aura. "Do the Greville only give birth to monsters?" the third muttered with disbelief. Sigh. Xander sighed. This made Zakram, who was standing closer to him, a bit confused. Is he not happy with the result? Zakram misunderstood what Xander was thinking. Arthur Greville's bad relationship with Xander was known to most people in the upper society, and most families were rather glad that it remained that way. If not for that, the alliance of the three elite families in Somaria could have become a lot more troublesome for everyone else. Xander looked at the screen as he watched Asher remove his hands from Kevin's face and turn to place the medallion in the stone. Asher walked towards the grey stone structure and placed the medallion in the cavity. Just as he did, a rune formation was triggered and the medallion started shining, and just like that, an announcement came from all the members of both the teams. The exam has ended, all students are requested to stop now. It was Xander's voice. Alyssa, who had been countering Eva's barrier magic and dodging Elena's spells, stopped choosing her magic and levitated down towards the ground. The whole time, she had been using the enormous ice cage that was all around them to her advantage, but she hadn't tried too hard. The winner of this race is Asher Greville. What? Elena had a shocked look on her face, and the reaction of everyone on their team was similar to hers but not as drastic. Apart from Elena and Eva, none of them were confident in winning because they hadn't seen Kevin use his lightning aura even once. They knew that Kevin had a lightning element which made him a lot stronger, but this technique was only known to Elena and Eva, as Kevin didn't tell anyone else about it. "Ah, we arrived a bit too late," Damien said as he saw Elena and the rest of Kevin's team. But it seems like we weren't even needed, Damien said as he grinned. Alyssa went behind all of them, as she didn't want any more attention. Her performance today was enough to show that she was worthy of rank 3, but she was careful in not showing everything she knew, unlike when she sparred with Asher. From the start, only Alyssa knew that Asher was a C rank hunter, not a D+ rank hunter. Knowing that Asher didn't reveal his true rank the whole time, Alyssa also maintained a low profile and didn't display anything too shocking for others. Even while dealing with Elena and the others, she merely wasted time by dodging and dispelling their spells. Our staff members will come to assist you, also follow them. Xander concluded his message as he declared Asher and his team the winners of this exam. All 4 of you, please complete the gradings and submit them by the end of this week, Xander said, looking at Zakram and the rest of the 3 professors. He looked at the staff team that was hurrying towards Kevin, to take him to the medical center they had already set up. Asher, who was standing in front of the circular stone, turned as he looked around the rocky terrain. They should be in that direction, Asher muttered. As he turned, he noticed various people that were part of the staff team that was here to manage everything. One of them hurried towards Kevin while another approached Asher. Do you have any injuries? He asked Asher. No, Asher replied. Then please follow them back to the central path, he told Asher. Asher turned back as he noticed various medical professionals helping Kevin. He glanced to his side, check his mana levels, feed a potion to him, see if there are any undue. Asher ignored it as he went ahead. On the way back, Asher saw Damien and the rest of his team waiting for him. Damn, you really won, Damien said with a smile on his face. Well, it doesn't feel like we helped at all though, Amelia said. A win is a win, I don't mind. Damien shrugged his shoulders. Let's go, we should receive our rewards now, Damien said as all of them turned to leave. Arriving at the central camp, they spotted Xander standing there already. Looking around, Elena and the others were already absent, which meant that they were sent back to World Academy. Only Kevin was present here, as he was still getting treated and was still unconscious due to the overuse of mana. Congratulations on winning, Xander said. Thanks, Damien, Vanessa, and Amelia replied at the same time. As you are the winning teams, you will receive the reward for it as well, Xander said. As Damien's eyes lit up, he knew that World Academy would not give them anything that they could get with money. After all, why would someone like Asher, Amelia, and Damien want anything they could buy themselves? The rewards are a visit to the Sanctuary of Mages or a request for a weapon from the Artisans Association, and Dexter Wright, the chairman of the Artisans Association, would himself work on it. Xander gave them 2 choices to choose from. The Sanctuary of Mages was just like the Great Library, but instead of theory, it was where the research of hundreds of years of thousands of mages was present, from a normal mage to the previous chairman, and even the research and contributions of Sylvis Grandis were present in the Sanctuary of Mages. What really? Damien said, looking at Xander. Eth cubed currency eth macron degrees middle dot broken bar currency degrees yes, choose carefully, Xander said, and he glanced briefly at Vanessa, who was trying to act casually. Damn, uncle, don't stare too long. They will notice it, Vanessa shouted in her mind. She didn't want her connection to the DeMarcus family to be exposed. We will ask for your response by the end of this week, so think hard about what you want to choose, Xander said before he left. Damien immediately turned and looked at Asher. What will you choose? He asked. Sanctuary of Mages, Asher replied instantly. What? Damien said. We can get a weapon from Sir Dexter Wright himself. Damien said. You would have to wait until you become the head of your family to even request him to make a weapon for you, Damien said. But looking at Asher's face, Damien gave up and looked at Amelia. I am choosing the Sanctuary of Mages as well, she replied. I will choose the second option, Sam replied when Damien looked at him. Even Vanessa decided to choose a weapon as they weren't mages, so going to the Sanctuary of Mages wouldn't help them at all. At the World Academy, Elena and Eva were going back to the rankers' dorm, but both of them were quiet. "We even tried our best," Elena muttered as she clenched her fist. "Why can't we defeat him?" Elena said, and Eva quietly followed her. Even Eva's mood was not good, as she didn't think that they would lose after such a lead in the race. On the other hand, Licia was sitting with Matthew and they were getting themselves checked. It was a mandatory procedure, and Elena and Eva had already finished it. "You don't seem as sad as them?" Licia struck up a conversation with Matthew. Matthew raised his head with a confused look on his face. He didn't know why the most quiet person on the team was speaking with him. Knowing that Licia was a princess, Matthew had assumed that she wouldn't talk to him because of his status. After all, she rarely talked with Elena and Eva the whole time, maintaining her distance from them. "You were the only one who didn't react much when the announcement that we lost came," she said. "You were observing me?" Matthew said as he pointed at himself. Licia was caught off guard by his question. "No, I looked at everyone at that time," she corrected her words. "That, I didn't expect to win in the first place," Matthew replied politely. "Okay," Licia said, and their conversation ended. The only reason Licia struck a conversation with Matthew was because her father only told her to avoid people from elite families, but Matthew didn't come from an elite family, so she was thinking of having a friendly relationship with him early on. Knowing he was rank 4 and above her, she knew that it was not bad to make good connections with him early on. Matthew didn't know why the Princess of Halcyon was talking to him, when she hadn't done so the whole time from the moment he joined the team. A few days were still left, as all the students were undergoing their midterm exams, and the invitations to Calva's gala were spreading among the elite families. The gala was going to happen soon, and many people were looking forward to attending this gala. "Where am I?" Kevin woke up and looked around. "You're in the medical facility of the camp set up by World Academy," one of the doctors who had been monitoring Kevin's health replied. "Huh?" Kevin tried to sit up, but he felt pain all over his body. "Don't move too much, your body is still recovering from the shock of using lightning aura," the doctor advised. "What about the race?" Kevin asked, his memories still fuzzy. "The other team won," he replied. Hearing these words, Kevin remembered the last thing he saw before he lost consciousness. Damn it, Kevin punched the bed he was lying on. Observing his behavior, the doctor stepped outside, giving Kevin some time to gather his thoughts. "I gave everything," Kevin said, looking down at his hands. Every time he had lost to Asher, it was during duels where they hadn't used their full potential, but in this exam, Kevin had not only used all the artifacts given by Relin but had also deployed the lightning aura technique. Originally, he had planned to hide this ability until the end of term examination, using it only if necessary. The lightning aura was currently Kevin's strongest technique. It allowed D-rank Kevin to be comparable to a C-rank hunter, but only for a short time. It was the first time he had felt so defeated in his life, but this feeling fueled his urge to defeat Asher even more. "No, I can't go down like this." Kevin remembered what his father had always told him. Camden had ensured that Kevin and Relin grew up in an environment suitable for them to become strong individuals who could hold their own in high society. Camden hadn't achieved his current status through power alone. While Kevin was finding his motivation, Elena was in her training room, practicing alone, but it was less of practice, more of her venting her anger, casting multiple spells all around her. Elena stopped as she felt her mana depleting rapidly. "This won't work," Elena said to herself. All this time, she had believed that one day Kevin could surpass Asher with her help, but it was time for her to face reality. The gap between them had grown so large that she felt somewhat powerless. "We need to get stronger," Elena said, her eyes turning sharp. While the losing team were finding their resolve to become stronger, everyone on the winning team was happy, but most of them had gone straight to sleep, except for Asher, who was standing in the training facility looking at his spatial device. "Come out," Asher commanded, and a black shadow formed, a serpent appearing before him. "Take these." Asher offered 20 corpses of peak D-rank monsters to Riffer. Riffer examined the monster corpses spread around him. In the next moment, Rifa began wrapping around various monster corpses, devouring the energy in their bodies. Asher felt the mana in the monsters' bodies deplete rapidly as Rifa took his time to devour them. Not enough, Rifa's voice echoed in Asher's head. Asher glanced around, noting that Rifa's level hadn't increased at all. Are these not enough? Asher wondered, surveying the corpses now devoid of mana. Although he wasn't sure, Asher had estimated that the strange beast he owned wouldn't find D-rank monsters appealing. After all, he knew how Rifa's presence alone made the monsters step back in fear. Take these, then, Asher said, offering the C-rank monsters. The next moment, Asher felt a surge of black energy around Rifa as he began devouring the C-rank monsters Asher had acquired from the dungeon. Rifa is devouring C-rank monsters. Rifa's level has increased to level 2. Rifa's level has increased to level 3. Rifa's level has increased to level 4. Rifa's level has increased to level 5. Rifa has unlocked a new skill. Asher saw a new notification as Rifa finished devouring all the monsters. The notification mentioned that Rifa had unlocked a new skill, which was different from the previous perfect concealment. More, Asher heard a voice in his head. As Rifa gained levels, Asher noted his speech was much improved. Rifa has gained shadow travel. Shadow travel. The skill allows the beast to return to the host no matter where it's from. The beast has imprinted itself on the host, so it will return to you no matter where you are. Absorb them as well, Asher told the serpent, giving it a few more C-rank monsters. Their blood spilled onto the floor of the training facility. However, whenever Rifa absorbed them, even the blood would disappear. The serpent's blood iris stared at Asher for a moment, then it returned to the task Asher had given it. Asher left the training facility, leaving Rifa to feed on the monsters, but after eating so many C-rank monsters, the experience gain had significantly decreased for Rifa. This was apparent, as Asher had received only a single notification from the system. Rifa's level has increased to level 6. After that, the notifications stopped. Soon after, Asher saw the serpent emerge from his shadow and disintegrate as it returned to the strange tattoo on his right arm, which also disappeared. Seeing this, Asher stood up and decided to take a shower. In a large mansion in Belvoria, also known as the Water Continent. Has Jaden returned? Asked a woman in her mid-30s. The servant responded, Not yet, my lady. The room was filled with the strong scent of a particular perfume, but the servant had grown accustomed to it. Did he not receive my message? The woman said, maintaining her calm gaze, but the servant was not fooled. He had worked for the Hargrave family for many years. We have sent the message, so young Master Jaden should arrive soon, he replied, struggling to breathe in front of this woman. Is her forgetting, by whom's help he became the heir of this family? The woman said she tapped the edge of her desk. Even now, the servant didn't dare meet the eye of this woman. Go back, the woman said, and the servant carefully stepped backwards so as not to make any noise. Once outside in the hallway, the servant took a deep breath. He had already contacted Jaden Hargrave multiple times, but he had not responded to the message. Why was I chosen to serve her? He wondered, cursing his luck. Many people sought to form connections with members of elite families, and being the younger sister of the Hargrave family head, it was strange for the servant to feel this way. Even though his status had increased as he worked for the family members of the Hargrave family, there was one problem. The lady he served was not the kindest soul in this world. In fact, rumors circulated that anyone who offended the young lady of the Hargrave family would soon meet their end. And the fact that the Hargrave family had turned a blind eye to all these rumors made it harder for people to blame her, as no evidence was ever found. I've waited for this gala. Finally, the woman said, pouring wine into a glass. There was a hint of killing intent seeping from her. Eth copyright eth superscript a eth currency eth copyright eth cents eth plus minus eth micro eth broken bar eth cubed eth superscript a eth pilcro eth plus minus eth yen eth cents eth micro eth broken bar eth yen eth pound eth superscript o eth apostrophe eth cubed eth broken bar eth cedilla eth apostrophe eth pound eth macron eth degrees eth apostrophe pound eth apostrophe eth dot eth apostrophe eth apostrophe o eth registered. "So you still haven't gotten the rights over that dungeon?" Jaden said, an annoyed look on his face. "Young master, we are trying, but the World Association is attempting to claim it as well," his personal secretary replied. "So what?" Jaden retorted. "If they are not backing down, use the name of the Hargrave family," Jaden instructed. His secretary looked worried. "But young master, doing that might not be the best op." The secretary stopped midway as Jaden rose from his seat. Jaden began walking towards his secretary, stopping a meter away and looking down at him. "Choose your words carefully," Jaden warned, his mana pressure beginning to increase. "You are standing in front of the heir of the Hargrave family," Jaden reminded. "I apologize, young master." The secretary immediately apologized. Seeing his secretary's expression, Jaden retracted his mana pressure. "Go handle that problem. I don't care what you do, but I need that dungeon under my control," Jaden commanded as he returned to his seat. "As you wish, young master," the secretary replied, stepping out of the room. "A bit more and my position will be solidified," Jaden mused, considering the number of people he had won over to his side. "Nobody deserves to be the next head of the Hargrave family more than me," Jaden muttered, glancing at the message he had received that morning. "Is she still looking for me?" Jaden examined a message from his aunt, who wished to meet with him. Jaden had ignored his aunt's summons for some time, but he knew that prolonging this evasion wouldn't be beneficial. After all, his aunt was one of the key players who had helped him become the heir to the Hargrave family. The Hargrave family had a rule stating that only the strongest in the family would ascend to the position of family head. Because of this tradition, the heirs were selected from among the children with the most potential. Jaden had been named the heir for this reason, instead of his younger brother, who was the son of the current family head. Jaden, the nephew of the family head, had been selected. Despite the tradition of the strongest becoming the heir, maintaining his position as heir was not easy for Jaden. To solidify his position, he required significant support from others to ensure that no one could threaten his position. One of these supporters was Cassie Hargrave, the younger sister of the Hargrave family head. Should I visit her? Jaden found himself in a dilemma. Out of all people, he, being closest to Cassie after the family head, understood what kind of person she was. Why is she moving so much? Jaden considered the information he'd received from his secretary about Cassie's recent activities. For more than a decade, Cassie had done nothing more than stay at her mansion. Occasionally, she would venture out to vent her frustrations in a dungeon, but apart from that, she rarely left her home. Jaden didn't fear anyone outside his family, understanding the extent of his power as a Hargrave. This was precisely why Jaden kept a close eye on those who were allied with him. Cassie was the reason Jaden had been declared the heir of the family. Her mother, who was Cassie's younger sister, had somehow managed to secure Cassie's support for her son. Typically, Jaden would have needed to demonstrate his strength before the whole family and gain the approval of everyone, including his grandfather and the current family head. However, due to Cassie's influence, he was made the heir when he attained rank 1 in his first year at the World Academy. Such was Cassie's influence within the Hargrave family. Despite her years of isolation, after much thought, Jaden finally decided to personally visit Cassie at her mansion. Although he disliked being manipulated by others, he didn't want to become enemies with his aunt. It took him an hour to reach her mansion, where he saw very few servants. All of them were undeniably loyal to Cassie Hargrave, whether out of sincerity or fear. Jaden understood how difficult it had been to glean information about his aunt's movements. "Tell Aunt Cassie that I have come to visit," Jaden instructed a bowing servant. "As you wish, young master," the servant replied. After waiting for 2 minutes in the lobby, Jaden saw the servant returning. "Young lady has given her permission," the servant informed him politely. "Lead the way," Jaden instructed, following the servant to a garden brimming with roses. The intense scent made him frown slightly, but he ignored it as he noticed a beautiful woman dressed in a long gown, seated in the middle of the garden. "It seems my nephew doesn't bother replying to his aunt anymore," Cassie remarked as she closed her book. "You're mistaken, I was just a bit busy because of my assignments," Jaden explained, feeling somewhat intimidated by Cassie's presence. "Do you see these flowers?" Cassie inquired. plucking a rose. "Yes," Jaden replied, "they are so beautiful and full of life, but the moment we stop watering them, they become lifeless and unattractive." Cassie reflected as the rose in her hand instantly withered. Jaden understood the underlying meaning of her words. The rose was symbolic of him, and the water represented Cassie's support. Her words served as a reminder that even though he was the heir, he was not superior to her. "But you like these roses, so you wouldn't stop watering them, would you?" Jaden asked, turning her analogy around. "Of course not, but the moment these thorns hurt me, I might just burn this garden down," Cassie retorted, the withered rose in her hand igniting into flames. "Well, I know you're in your last year, so I won't waste your time anymore," Cassie said as she pulled out a letter from her spatial ring. "It's an invitation to the Calvers Gala," she informed, but her next statement caused Jaden to raise an eyebrow. "I'll attend the Calvers Gala," she announced. "What?" Jaden questioned. "Is it strange for me to go there?" Cassie inquired. No, it's fine," Jaden stammered, taken aback. Cassie Hargrave, who hadn't attended a single event and even skipped family gatherings for over a decade, suddenly wished to attend the Calvers Gala. It was no wonder Jaden was taken by surprise. "I was going to tell my brother myself, but I thought you might be a better choice," Cassie explained. However, her decision to have Jaden deliver her message had a double meaning. Firstly, it served as a reminder to Jaden of his place in the family. Secondly, it was an opportunity for Jaden to demonstrate that Cassie Hargrave, who was finally re-emerging in society, was backing him. "I'll do it," Jaden confirmed, although he needed to show her respect. Gaining her support when she was about to re-enter society was a chance he didn't want to miss. 2 hours later, Jaden was back at his place and immediately called for his secretary. "Did you call me?" the secretary asked as he entered the room. "If it's about the dungeon, I'm still trying." He was cut off mid-sentence by Jaden. "Call back all the people keeping an eye on Aunt Cassie," Jaden ordered. The secretary was taken aback by Jaden's abrupt decision but didn't challenge his instructions. "Yes, I will call them back," he replied, before exiting the room. I/N, Cassie Hargrave is currently 35 years old. I have corrected the error in the heist arc, so, he is rank 1 in all the tests? Damien asked Amelia, who nodded in response. "How is that even possible?" Damien exclaimed. He could understand that Asher was powerful, but him achieving first place in all the tests was a bit surprising. They knew how challenging the theory exam was. In the theory exam, Eva came in second, scoring 12 marks less than the total, but Asher had achieved a perfect score, shocking Damien. Apart from them, many students failed to get passing marks. "Should I also spend more time studying?" Damien pondered as he looked at his score. While it was better than average, it wasn't anything too outstanding. Even Amelia was in the top 10, while Damien was hovering somewhere around the top 200. "Focus," Professor Terrence interjected, silencing everyone in class too. "You can discuss all you want later, after I make this announcement," he stated. "Next month, we will not have any classes because the Calvers Gala will be happening," he announced, brightening many students' expressions. The World Academy had resumed classes right after midterms, granting only a 2-day break to the students. Many of them were quite tired. Learning that they would enjoy a week-long break was enough to lift their spirits. All 4 years were informed about this. Apart from a few people, many elite families, and those from invited families were happy they were going to attend the gala. Among those not excited about the gala was Sam Alister. The gala was the place where all the elite families of the Halcyon continent would gather, including his father. Given a choice, Sam would have chosen to stay at the World Academy, but he couldn't defy his father's will. At the Greville estate, Sylvie was seated in the large lobby where many servants were standing, multiple dresses and suits in their hands. "What do you think about this one, Mum?" Sylvie asked Helena, who was seated there as well. Helena glanced at the twins trying on their dresses for the gala. "Let's ask the kids. I am old, they might not like the clothes I choose," Helena whispered to Sylvie. Sylvie turned to the twins, asking them which clothes they preferred from the ones the servants were displaying. "I think this one is fine," Livia commented as she tried on her fourth dress. From the looks alone, Livia could tell all these clothes were expensive, and considering the number of clothes she already had in her room, she didn't want to spend too much on these outfits. This one will be enough, Lucas decided, choosing a suit for himself. You need at least 7 to last the whole gala, Sylvie informed, causing Livia to tilt her head in confusion. The gala will last 4 days, Livia, Sylvie clarified, helping both twins understand why they were trying on so many dresses. By the way, did you choose a partner for my grandson? Helena inquired, as the twins struggled with the plethora of clothes they had to try on. Ah, that, I didn't, Sylvie admitted, causing Helena to frown. Eth cubed Eth cedilla Eth pound broken bar Eth currency degrees swell. Ask him about it, Helena advised, not pursuing the matter any further. By the way, the number of annoying people in Saran has increased, Helena noted as she sipped on her tea. We've dealt with most of them, but we expected this much after Asher showcased his talents, Sylvie replied while observing the twins. After the gala, it will increase even more, Helena warned her. Well, I can handle that. I'm your daughter after all, Sylvie responded with a smile. Helena smiled, knowing that Sylvie was intelligent enough to tackle these problems. The number of people growing wary of the Greville family's increasing power was not low. Consequently, many were sending people to some area to gather information on the Grevilles. Do you know who's hosting the gala? Sylvie asked. According to the information I received, it's the Liver family, Helen replied. The Liver family was one of the non-elite families that had sufficient influence and status to host the gala. After the Hargrave family had refused, they needed to choose a non-elite family as the host, so they selected Liver. Can't I just pick these 7? Lucas asked Sylvie, pointing at the first 7 outfits he had tried on. Nope, we'll have to choose the best for you, so keep trying, Sylvie said with a smile, rejecting Lucas. I want to train though, Lucas thought, begrudgingly going back to try on the next suit. In a vast desert, a single man was hiding behind a ridge. Hey, are you sure we won't die? Dane asked Tom through the communication device. Well, probably not, Tom replied. At least lions say we will survive, Dane said, but he didn't raise his voice. Where's Kai? Dane asked. He'll reach your position in a minute, so be ready, Tom responded. Dane took a deep breath to calm his nerves. Soon he saw Kai running toward him. Dane stood up and took out the necklace that was the teleportation artifact. Why is he taking so long? Dane muttered, watching Kai approach. Activate IT, Kai shouted as he reached Dane and jumped. Without hesitation, Dane activated the artifact, grabbing Kai's hand, and they both disappeared from the location. As soon as they vanished, a massive explosion obliterated everything in the large area they had been in, leaving nothing behind. Hey, did you escape safely? Tom asked, his voice laced with worry. We did, luckily, Kai replied, touching his communication device. Only half the locations are left, so keep up with the pace, Tom advised. Both Kai and Dane were exhausted, but they stood up anyway. Time was not on their side. In their previous location, they had spent more time than necessary, and they were now behind schedule. You can rest for today. I'll update the boss about our progress, Tom informed them before disconnecting the communication device. In his room, he reviewed the many locations they had visited. How does he know all this? Tom was unsure how Asher could provide such precise information. Is the information network of the elite families this strong? Tom pondered, starting to inform Asher about their progress. His task was critical. Although Asher had provided all necessary resources, a single mistake could jeopardize their mission. It should be fine now, Tom muttered, looking at his shaking hands. Dane and Kai were accustomed to high-risk missions, but Tom was an ordinary man before Asher recruited him. However, the stress of the situation was getting to him. What Asher was making him do could lead to severe repercussions from the authorities. Nevertheless, with the stress came the thrill of the job, pushing Tom to move forward. Until now, Tom hadn't made a single error like he did with the heist mission. Time to move from here, Tom mumbled after typing his message. He stood up and packed his equipment back into his spatial ring. This was a special spatial ring that even individuals like Tom could use. Upon reaching the hotel lobby, he prepared to check out. "Mr. Jason, you wish to check out?" the receptionist asked. Tom was currently wearing a mask that altered his facial features from his original looks. "Yes," Tom responded in a different tone than his original voice. "Thank you for your stay, sir," the receptionist replied. Tom surveyed the hotel, searching for transportation to his next location. Their mission comprised two parts, both of which needed to be fulfilled within a month. They had nearly completed the first part, but the second part was challenging due to the heightened security. This was because the World Association was hunting for traces of Zephyr. Although the second part was comparatively easier, it also required Tom to be extra cautious to avoid capture. A month had passed in the World Academy, and right now, Asher was standing in front of Xander, who had called him to his office. "So, I've gotten clearance from the faculty council," Xander said as he looked at Asher, "but I have a condition before I hand it over to you," Xander added, with a stern look on his face. "What is it?" Asher asked. "It's simple. Stop using the space element. You're strong enough without it," Xander said. It was obvious why Xander suggested such terms. After all, using the space element was extremely harmful for the caster. If it were someone else, Asher would have outright denied them, but he knew that Xander was different from others. "You don't have to worry about it," Asher said. "What if I tell your family that you're using the space element?" Xander asked, fully aware that the Calvez Gala was about to happen. "You can, and they won't stop me," Asher replied. "Okay," Xander said, stopping his persuasion of Asher. From this conversation alone, Xander could deduce that Asher could use the space element without much harm, and it was related to his family. He knew where the limits were in asking such things from Asher. "You can enter the Great Forest, but don't go beyond the blue area," Xander said as he handed a token to Asher. "This is a special token that you can use to enter and exit the Great Forest," Xander explained. He kept his word and persuaded the faculty council to allow Asher to enter the Great Forest. Usually, the council would have opposed such decisions as it looked like they were favoring one student, but Zakram and Naaman also showed their support to Xander, which quelled the opposition. The fact that Asher could fight C-rank monsters and had managed to defeat Blake Cranston in a spa helped Xander secure the rights for Asher to enter the Great Forest. Xander glanced down at a message he had received from his younger brother. He immediately read it, called his brother, and a hologram appeared. On the other side was the current head of the DeMarcus family. "Brother, aren't you going to the Calvez Gala this time either?" he asked. Section Y currency broken bar macron degrees middle tm currency no, Xander replied. "Why don't you worry about your daughter who keeps messing with others with her words?" Xander said. "Wait, did Vanessa cause any problems?" his younger brother asked with a worried look on his face. "I have handled them quietly, but tell her to behave like a student from a normal background if she wishes to stay hidden," Xander said. I will tell her," the DeMarcus head replied, but from his expression, it was clear he wouldn't say anything. After all, he knew how indulgent his younger brother was when it came to his daughter. Xander looked at the golden letter that he had received, the invitation to the Calvez Gala. For the last 20 years, Xander hadn't attended a single gala. There were 10 sites where the Calvez Gala was held, but the final location was only disclosed when the invitations were sent. The previous location was set in Dismar, but after the previous heist, they changed it as the head of the Liver family, Christina Liver, decided to host it in Somaria, on a flying island. There were multiple flying islands across Somaria, and this one was far from Saran, and closer to the city of Vernies, where the World Association headquarters were located. "We have arranged the accommodations for the elite families," the manager reported to Christina Liver, who herself was present on the flying island. It was a week before the Calvez Gala would open, and as the host, Christina could choose to change the theme and a few other things with the approval of a select group from the small association that managed the entire gala every year. Most of them were individuals that were recruited by the joint decision of the High Council, ensuring they remained neutral at all times. Christina looked at the layout, and it was exactly she had told them to make it to be. Yes, keep these people away from each other, Christina thought in her head. The Liver family was incredibly respected among the upper society, and that was because of their connections to the elite families. That's why they were given full authority to customize the gala to their liking. But there was another reason why the Liver family was so respected. Christina's husband was the son of one of the vice-chairmen of the World Association. The power structure of the World Association was distributed among 3 SSS rank hunters. The first was Ozbatavian, who was the chairman of the World Association and held the most power. However, there were 2 others who also worked to keep him in check. These 2 vice-chairmen oversaw the 2 factions within the World Association. One faction was responsible for maintaining peace and stability over the world. The second faction, the one to which Christina's father-in-law belonged, was responsible for managing the dungeons throughout the world. All 3 of them had their own authorities and power they wielded over the World Association. Gather all the people responsible for greeting the guests, Christina instructed as she turned and looked at the majestic castle that was the venue for this Calver's Gala. All the 10 locations had castles. Their layouts were similar, but the designs were completely different. Preparations went into full swing as Christina Liver personally changed the way this gala needed to be presented. I will make sure this gala is memorable, Christina declared, unaware at the time that even without her extra efforts, this gala would be something people would never forget. At the World Academy, Asher looked at the C-rank mana gem he had purchased from the trade market of the World Academy. He had purchased 2 of them. Take this. Asher tossed one of them in the air as a black shadow came out of his right hand and wrapped itself around the mana gem. Rifa has absorbed the mana gem. Rifa has reached level 9. Asher looked at the small snake which had grown a bit bigger. Can I get more? Rifa asked, its blood iris eyes staring at Asher. No. Asher rejected Rifa as he wanted to use the C-rank gem for himself. He was about to step inside his training room when he received a video call from Sylvie. He accepted the call, and Sylvie's face appeared on the hologram. So how is my lovely son doing? Sylvie asked with a smile on her face. It was hard to contact Asher as he spent most of his time training. I am fine, Mom, Asher replied as he put his sword back into his spatial ring. Were you training? Sylvie asked. Yeah, Asher replied. Don't push yourself too hard, Sylvie reminded Asher. Well, I wanted to ask if you wanted us to choose a partner for the gala, she asked. No, Asher replied. Well, if you change your mind do tell us. And Amelia told me you are not leaving on the first day? Sylvie asked. I will arrive after the auction, Asher said. Inform Emmy before you leave the World Academy. She will arrange everything, Sylvie told Asher. You can go train now, Sylvie said with a smile as she disconnected the call. Sylvie's smile faded away as she looked at the list of people from the Abyss Corporation that were found to be selling information to outsiders. After the death of one of their executives, Sylvie received a report about the executives selling information of Abyss Corporation. Kill them all, Sylvie said as she handed the report to her secretary. As you wish. The secretary took the report and left the room. It was obvious that removing all the moles was not possible as some would still survive, but her actions would instill fear in those that wanted to betray the Abyss Corporation. Sylvie looked at Arthur who was sitting in her office, casually looking at the reports of people that worked in the Abyss Corporation. Who is handling the guild work? Sylvie asked. The old man. Of course, I deserve a vacation sometimes as well, Arthur said with a smirk on his face. Should I also go and train to become SS rank? Sylvie asked as she looked at Arthur. Wait, then who will handle the Abyss Corporation? Arthur asked. Of course you, Sylvie replied. Sure, but don't complain if I mess things up, Arthur replied as he shrugged his shoulders. Big sister, Livia ran towards Amelia who had just arrived from the World Academy. She jumped as Amelia caught her and hugged her. You've grown so big and cute, Amelia said as she rubbed her cheeks with Livia's. Livia started laughing as Amelia closely hugged her. "Hello," Lucas said to Damien, who awkwardly nodded his head. The difference between the greetings was so stark that Damien felt weird. "Asher will come to the gala directly in the night," Damien said to Lucas, who was looking around. "Oh, okay," Lucas replied, stopping his search for Asher. Seeing Lucas a bit down, Damien thought of cheering him up, but his own experience with his younger brother wasn't much help. Damien was an energetic person, while Nate always preferred to read books and stay indoors. The Seymour brothers weren't the best combination, but he likes Asher. Maybe so, Damien thought. "Do you want to spar with me?" Damien offered. Livia, too, overheard. "I will do it." Livia raised her hand while she was in Amelia's arms. "Cute," Sylvie chuckled as she looked at Amelia and Livia. Amelia immediately glared at Damien. "Eh?" Damien was confused, feeling as if Amelia was warning him not to hurt Livia. "I train with grandfather all the time, but he is super busy and nobody spars with me," Livia said, pointing at the servants who became a bit awkward. "You train with grandfather?" Amelia asked, and Livia cutely nodded at her. Amelia knew that Livia was learning the great sword and Nathan was helping her, but she didn't know he was training her as well. "I also want to spar," Lucas said, looking up at Damien. "Yeah, I think I'll spar with Lucas." "Why not spar with Amelia, Livia?" Damien suggested, making another faux pas. He felt Amelia's glare had grown even more powerful. "Are you telling me to hurt my cute little sister?" Damien could almost hear Amelia's thoughts at the moment. "Will you spar with me?" Livia tilted her head back to ask Amelia. But Amelia was at a loss for words, turning to her mother for help. "Oh, that's wonderful. We still have a few hours before we leave," Sylvie chimed in, looking at Amelia. Amelia, unable to refuse Sylvie, agreed to spar with Livia, albeit not seriously. However, she was about to learn why the servants of the Greville family didn't want to spar with little Livia. Lucas, sitting beside Damien, watched the duel between Amelia and Livia unfold. Livia took up a great sword, a comical sight given her small build. She immediately dashed towards Amelia, who wielded a dagger. Amelia used a water spell to create a soft shield to repel her attacks, but Livia sidestepped and jumped in the air. "What kind of fighting style is this?" Damien muttered, watching Livia. "Oh, grandfather told her to fight like that to make her sparring partners take her seriously," Lucas explained, "especially against Big Sister and Uncle Arthur." Lucas added, "He didn't tell her to do it against Asher?" Damien asked. "No, he told us to spar with Big Brother with getting injured in mind," Lucas said, recalling Nathan's instructions. "Oh, yeah, he is right," Damien agreed, remembering his own sparring experiences with Asher. Even though it helped him improve, he always got severely injured. Amelia was trying to avoid Livia, but Livia kept pushing herself onto Amelia, forcing her to use more spells. Their spar went on like this, but in Damien's eyes, it looked like one person was enjoying it, while the other was regretting it. "Ha, you are so strong, Livia," Amelia said, looking at Livia who was panting as she sat on the floor. "But Big Sister is stronger," Livia responded with a smile, melting Amelia's heart. "So cute," Amelia thought. Damien and Lucas stood up to spar, as Lucas prepared multiple spells in his hands. "You can multicast?" Damien asked, looking surprised. "Yeah," Lucas replied, though he was not keen on becoming a mage in the beginning. His talent also surprised his teachers. This was the reason Nathan brought him to the Mage Association, to help him realize that being a mage wasn't bad at all. Lucas prepared multiple fireballs in his hands. His eyes focused on Damien. They give a similar vibe. Damien felt a resemblance between Asher and Lucas. Although it was small, he could feel it in the way Lucas carried himself. Their spar was less intense as Lucas knew that his spells wouldn't work on Damien due to their rank difference. He had just reached F rank, so he was still below Damien. Lucas compressed the fireball in his hands and ran towards Damien, who wasn't using a shield right now. Damien was fighting with his bare hands since using a shield would make it impossible for Lucas to harm him at all. They exchanged various attacks, with Livia cheering loudly for Lucas while Amelia just watched and enjoyed the spa. They were about to leave in an hour, so neither of them pushed too hard. "We've prepared your baths," a maid came to inform Amelia. "Let's go, Livia," Amelia said, and Livia nodded. They needed to get dressed, so they left while Lucas and Damien continued sparring. At the World Academy, Asher finally emerged from his room after a 5-day-long training session with his sword art. "It's increased quite a lot this time," Asher noted, looking at the total increase in his mastery. Node Art, Novice, 62%, and Asher could feel that he could push it to 80% with another week's practice. However, he stopped as the day of the gala had arrived. Though he wasn't going to attend the opening ceremony, he planned to attend after the auction when everyone would gather for a dance. He had something important to do before arriving at the gala. "Time to invite her," Asher said as he messaged Alyssa. At the mansion in Saran, Tom had already arrived while Dane and Kai were on their last mission, which was due to conclude soon. Tom couldn't assist them any further as the location they were in disabled any form of outside communication. "This is the most crucial part. I hope they succeed," Tom said as he looked at the data he had gathered over the past 2 months. Outside the portal dome in Saran, a large number of S-rank and SS-rank hunters were present. They were there to escort the children of the elite families and those who were invited. Normally, the presence of so many hunters would have alarmed the people around Saran, but the whole world was aware of the Calvers Gala. "So, they're here," Rhea said as she noticed the hunters of the 3 elite families of Dismar standing there, waiting for them. "Let's go, we should enjoy the gala," Rhea said to Elena. Section eth broken bar eth currency eth broken bar eth degrees eth middle dot eth registered after the midterm. It took them weeks to regain their motivation. "Yeah," Elena replied, but she also knew about the true nature of this gala. For them, they would just enjoy the gala, but for the adults, that place was where each family kept a watchful eye on the others. The auction was the biggest attraction for the elite families, as this was the only place where SSS rank artifacts could be found. SSS rank artifacts were typically passed down within families, with older ones only surfacing at these auctions. At Mzalm Flying Island, and Snovel.com, the castle, where the Calvers Gala was going to be hosted, was surrounded by loads of photographers waiting around the entrance where the teleportation gate was located. "Who's going to arrive first?" a man asked his group. "I don't know, this time the timings are all messy for some reason," one of them replied. None of them knew about the heist conducted by a group named Zephyr, as this information was suppressed by the elite families. Only a few were aware of this, which is why the reputation of the White Hart family was only affected among the upper echelon of society. "Hey, the first person has arrived," one of them announced, and the cameras began pointing at the glowing teleportation gate. The first guest of the Calvers Gala had arrived and stepped out of the portal. "Why is it night here?" a little girl asked as she peeked from behind her father. "It's illusion magic," her father responded as he patted his daughter's silver hair. In front of them stood an old man whose presence was a shock to all. After all, this man was known for not attending any social events and he would always send his representatives to the gala. "It's Silvus Grandus, look at that hair and those eyes," one of them spoke out as they noticed the silver hair and amber eyes. "And are those his grandchildren?" They noticed the twins who were walking behind Silvus. The cameras started flashing, taking pictures of Silvus and his family. This was the first event Silvus had attended and none of them were going to miss out on reporting this news to the rest of the world. "We greet the seat holder." The servants at the entrance of the gala greeted Silvus. "Please let us guide you all to your accommodations." One of them stepped out and Silvus nodded. His family walked inside the entrance where only invited people were allowed. "This is so beautiful," Silvus' granddaughter remarked as she looked up at the night sky. Though somewhat obstructed, she could still see the majestic castle of Mzelm Island. After Silvus entered, the next to arrive was the Martel family. Accompanying the patriarch was his son Tyrone Martel, the vice president of the student council. As he was the heir, He walked beside his father with the rest of the family trailing behind them. Tyrone looked around, noticing the night sky and the decorations adorning the entrance, crafted by various mages. However, nothing surpassed the sight of the glowing white castle in the distance. The auction would start in the evening and end at 10, when the night party would begin. The first day of the auction only featured S-rank artifacts, so it was not too heated. After the Martells, the Watson family from Fascia, one of the elite families, arrived. If one needed to place a family in 5th place among the elite families, it would be the Watson family. The 4th position was taken by the Rothschild family, and the rest of the rankings were considered meaningless, as nobody could truly rank the elite families. Another seat holder, they commented as they saw an old man with grey hair and orange eyes enter. The imposing aura of the elite families, and their personal guards, made it difficult for reporters to get too close. One by one, a few other invited families that were famous in the world also entered through the entrance. All were guided to their accommodations. The next elite family to enter was the DeMarcus family, with the DeMarcus head taking the lead. Vanessa would have liked this, the lady of the DeMarcus family thought as she admired the beautifully decorated gala. She didn't blame Vanessa, even though she was an illegitimate child. The relationship between her and the DeMarcus head had deteriorated, but they still behaved like a normal couple in public. Following them was the Neville family. Gavin entered with his father, their striking green hair immediately revealing their identities. "You're capturing their photos correctly, right?" one of the reporters asked the cameraman. Some families were bringing their heirs or other children to the gala for the first time, but most reporters were waiting for one particular family, the Greville family, more accurately the children of Ivar Greville. While it wasn't confirmed whether they would attend, much of the world was eager to see the offspring of Ivar Greville, also known as the hero of Saran. This curiosity wasn't limited to reporters. Many among the elite families were keen to see the children of the prodigy from the previous generation. "Who has entered till now?" Christina asked a servant. After 2 hours, many families had arrived, apart from Greville, Hargrave. The servant began listing the names. "All of them will arrive within an hour, so get things ready," Christina instructed as the maids finished her makeup. "You look beautiful, Lady Lover," one of her personal maids complimented. "Stop flattering me. Ask Carson to get ready to open the gala with me," she instructed, rising from her seat. At this point, at the entrance, the Greville family had arrived. Every person paused as they felt the imposing aura of Nathaniel von Greville, who stood in front with Arthur beside him. Damien was with Amelia, while Lucas and Livia partnered up with each other. "Are they the twins?" some started whispering. However, the imposing aura momentarily made a few of them forget to take a picture. "Why are they looking at us like that?" Livia whispered to Lucas. "Ignore them," Lucas advised, gripping Livia's hand tightly. He had taken Arthur's advice not to let any comments affect them, as people might try to manipulate them. Lucas was prepared to face any challenges, but he wanted to protect his sister from such things. "Asher Greville isn't with them, is he not coming?" someone murmured in confusion. They couldn't understand why the heir of the family hadn't come. Amelia, accompanying Damien, simply kept her gaze forward, used to such situations. Following the Grevilles were Helena and Alfred. It was the first time both had attended together. Normally only Alfred attended, but this time even Helena Raven had come to the gala. From Sylvus to Helena, many people who usually didn't attend were present. This made those in attendance excited to see how the gala would unfold. After the Raven family, the chairman of the World Association made his entrance, accompanied by his 2 companions. Leonard was just behind them with the daughter of one of the vice-chairmen of the World Association as his partner. Unlike with previous arrivals, the reporters relaxed as the World Association was seen as the face of the common people. Thus, all were very excited to see the entrance of the people leading the World Association. All the other families arrived one after another, the Whiteharts, the Rothschilds, the Williams, and the 3 families of Halcyon, which included the Royal family, the Alistair family, and the Everett family. Only the Hargraves were left. "Why haven't the Hargraves arrived yet?" Some people were confused with only half an hour left before the gala would open, but their expressions quickly changed when the Hargrave family arrived. The seat holder and the family head of the Hargraves came in with a single lady between them. Many were confused, not recognizing the woman, but when someone identified her, everyone soon understood the identity of this lady being escorted by both the seat holder and the family head of the Hargrave family. It was Cassie Hargrave herself, the most loved daughter of the SSS rank hunter, Xarax Hargrave, the one person who hadn't attended any social events for more than a decade. Speculation began to buzz around her arrival. Is it because of the Grevels? Some murmured, but no one knew for sure why Cassie had chosen to attend the gala this time. Wasn't she the one that was engaged to Eva Greville? One whispered, but no one dared speak any further on the matter. Cassie carried herself with confidence, as if she was used to the social atmosphere surrounding her. Even Jaden, following behind, was surprised by her confident demeanor. No one knew what was going to happen. This uncertainty was the reason the Hargrave family head wanted to avoid hosting the gala. Don't worry, nobody would dare look down on my daughter, Xarax Hargrave reassured, as Cassie smiled in response. There was a reason why Cassie had the most say in the Hargrave family after the family head himself. She had the full support of Xarax Hargrave, the SSS rank hunter, and the seat holder that represented the Hargrave family in the High Council. After 21 minutes, all the servants called the representatives of all the invited families to the White Castle. There were a total of 40 invited families, and Christina Liver was standing with Carson Liver before the entrance of the White Castle, whose huge gates would mark the start of the Calvers Gala. Arthur, who had come with the Greville family, put his hand on the glass ball as they poured their mana in. For the honor of hosting the gala, the theme for this gala is the Eternal Night, Christina announced with a broad smile. As mana was poured in by the 40 representatives, a massive white bird made of mana appeared and traveled across the Mzelm flying island. The Dark Night theme was lit up as the bird shattered and turned into numerous stars, and some of the blobs of light cast the illusion of a full moon appearing in the sky. So beautiful, Amelia commented, looking at the sky with Livia sitting beside her. This was the first time such things were done, and Christina wanted to be the first one to do it. As expected of Liver, Philia Rothschild acknowledged as she gazed at the sky. This gala is different from the others, Elena observed with a smile, noticing the effort put in by the Liver family. They are the best at creating beautiful things, Philia agreed, glancing at her daughter. Meanwhile, at the World Academy, so, do you want to go to the gala with me? Asher offered Alyssa, who was confused by his invitation. Why? Alyssa asked, although she didn't outright reject him. I will tell you the reason when we arrive there, Asher responded. FTM section FTMS apostrophe F apostrophe F apostrophe F FTM pound F apostrophe F apostrophe FTMS FTM inverted exclamation mark dot F apostrophe FTM sense. Don't worry, you will wear an artifact that changes your hair color and eyes, Asher assured her. But the Calvers Gala was one place where Alyssa was unsure if she could handle herself. After all, the killers of her mother and her family were the ones enjoying the gala to the fullest. Should I just accept his request? Alyssa pondered. After all, she had received a lot from Asher. The schedule for the gala was divided into 3 sections. The first was the opening ceremony of the gala, during which the invited families would spend their time in the mansions allotted to them. The second was the auction, set to begin in the evening, followed by the Equita night party where mostly the younger generation would dance with their partners. The night party was a 6-hour-long event which was done to entertain the guests that attended the Calvers Gala. It was filled with various events and the dance was the ending event for the day 1 of the gala. This tradition has been upheld for many years at the Calvers Gala. Arthur looked around and noticed many eyes fixed on him, particularly due to his new SS rank. To them, Arthur reaching SS rank was not good news. You seem to be attracting quite a lot of attention, David remarked, standing at the Seymour family spot. What can I do? I'm just that attractive. Arthur shrugged his shoulders. David merely smiled and returned with Arthur. The auction was about to start. and half of the SSS rank hunters had gathered in the special room designed for their assembly. "It's been a long time, Nathaniel Greville," the SSS rank hunter of the Hargrave family greeted Nathan. "Looks like you're still alive," Nathan responded with a laugh, but none of these SSS rank hunters were friendly towards each other. After all, only an SSS rank existence could kill another SSS rank existence. "Seems like you and Dalton are still not on equal terms," Xarax Hargrave noted as his eyes fell upon Dalton Rothschild. "Spare me your games, Xarax," Dalton countered, shutting down Xarax. These rooms were made from the most robust materials to withstand the SSS rank hunters. They couldn't sit with anyone else. "A lot of people are attending this time. I wonder why," Osbert Tavian mused as he entered the room. His gaze shifted to Silvus, who was already seated. This room had only 11 seats, each placed far from the others. After Osbert, the two vice-chairmen of the World Association also entered the room. "So you did attend the gala, Sir Silvus," one of the vice-chairmen said as he took his seat. Despite all of them being SSS rank hunters, a few, like Silvus and Farnus, were noticeably older than the rest. "I just wanted to educate the younger ones about the world," Silvus replied calmly. In their eyes, they saw potential enemies. Even amidst friendly conversation, none of them were ready to expose their weaknesses. Another SSS rank hunter entered this time. It was from the Cranston family, Joseph Kema Cranston, the seat holder of the Cranston family. The number of SSS rank hunters in the room now reached 8. Soon, the SSS rank hunter of the Watson family also made his entrance. The only remaining SSS rank hunters were Dexter Wright and Farnus Calmort. "I've heard about your grandson's talents," Joseph said, looking at Nathan. "That kid is quite talented," Nathan confirmed with a wide grin. "But what about him?" Nathan asked, his once vibrant energy taking a more sinister turn. This was the Nathaniel Greville they all knew well. One rule was upheld at the Calvers Gala: no family could attack another during the gala. Only one family in history had ever broken this rule and survived, the Greville family. And the one who had broken the rule was Nathan's great-grandfather, who had severed the hand of a man who had insulted his daughter. The Greville family had always behaved this way, but back then, there were only 5 SSS rank hunters, and Nathan's great-grandfather was one of them. At that time, nobody could challenge the Greville family, but people felt less threatened in the present with 11 SSS rank hunters around. "Let's not get too worked up," Osbert interjected, halting their conversation. "Do you, the chairman of the World Association, wish to impose rules here as well?" Xarax Hargrave asked as he turned to look at Osbert Tavian. As one of the 3 strongest families, the only entity maintaining the balance and holding the elite families back was the World Association. "When have I ever done that?" Osbert retorted. "I only abide by the rules set forth by the High Council," Osbert stated as he returned Xarax's gaze. "If you insist," Xarax said, choosing not to extend the conversation further. It wasn't time yet for their talk to become threatening. After all, the SSS rank artifacts they were all waiting for would only appear on the last day of the auction. In another room, the 7 heads of the Calvers Gala were gathered, with Christina from the Lever family also present. "So, who will host the auction?" the Martel family head asked the old man from the authority managing the Calvers Gala. The old man pointed to Cameron, who was standing behind him. "Good luck," another head chuckled, aware of how intense the auction could become on the 2nd and 3rd days. "Well, our duties are fulfilled, so when will the next 7 heads be announced?" he asked. "Perhaps on the last day. We're still waiting for the final confirmation from Lord Dexter," the old man replied. Dexter Wright was still working on the vault, trying to decipher how the intruders had breached it. The conversation irked Camden Whiteheart somewhat, but he could do nothing about it. This was the final meeting between the 7 heads. The titles would be passed on to the next chosen 7 among the remaining 33 invited guests. Back at the Saran mansion, Asher arrived, stepping out of his car with Alyssa and Emmy, who had ensured that no one saw them leave the World Academy. "Take her to the room on the 2nd floor," Asher instructed Emmy, who nodded in response. Alyssa had agreed to accompany Asher to the Calvers Gala, but she was unaware of his intentions. Instead of heading to Tom's room, Asher stopped at a room from which a strange sound emanated. Asher opened the door to find Erwin inside, the same Professor Erwin who would have killed Asher if not for Xander's intervention. Erwin's eyes widened upon seeing Asher. "It's been a while," Asher commented as he approached Erwin. Erwin tried to move, but he was unable. He had survived the past months without any food or water, but he had been constantly fed a drug that Asher had instructed Tom to administer. However, he hadn't received anything for the past 2 months. If Erwin were not an S-rank hunter, he would have died long ago. Even now, his body was thin, and odd black veins were appearing all over. Erwin recalled when he fell into Asher's trap. "I'm glad that the chairman didn't abandon me," Erwin said, looking at the woman who had saved him. He quickly surveyed the surroundings of the place they had arrived at. However, in the very next moment, the woman approached him. Unbeknownst to Erwin, she swiftly injected a drug into his neck. The action was too swift for him to react. Having just escaped the jaws of death, Erwin was unprepared for the woman's attack. His sudden relaxation made him an easy target. "What?" Erwin immediately pushed the woman away. As he touched his neck, he felt his connection to mana disappear. "It works," Emmy thought as she observed Erwin wobble on his feet. She had received instructions from Asher to trap Erwin by using the word chairman. Somehow, Erwin trusted her immediately without questioning her identity. "Go sleep for a while," Emmy commanded, knocking out Erwin and applying mana restraining cuffs. She didn't know why, but Asher told her to capture Erwin no matter what, before his grandmother could get to him. Since then, Erwin was locked in a room at the mansion, while Asher experimented with his drugs. "Be grateful, your time to be useful has come," Asher said, pulling out a dagger and stabbing it into Erwin's heart. Erwin attempted to move, but he was linked to mana restraining devices and didn't have enough power to gather even a small amount of mana. "Host has gained 120,000 EXP as expected," Asher thought as he read the notifications. As the factors that led to Erwin's weakness were due to the drugs that Asher concocted himself, he received the full experience for killing an S-rank hunter like Erwin. "It would have been better if I could have controlled him," Asher thought as he received a message from Tom. "Kai has arrived, we can start the final plan." At that moment, Kai arrived at the mansion using the teleportation artifact. He promptly made his way to the room Asher was in. "May I devour it?" Riffa asked Asher, the tattoo on his right arm materializing. "Not this one," Asher responded. He had other plans for Erwin's lifeless body. As the tattoo receded, Kai stepped into the room, catching sight of Erwin's lifeless form. Tom had already briefed him on this part of the plan, so Kai was prepared to transport Erwin's body to the location where Dane was waiting. "You have full control over it, right?" Asher asked Kai, resting the dagger atop Erwin's corpse. "Yes, boss," Kai responded as sense of satisfaction washed over him. They had nearly completed their mission, and they were both still alive. The past 2 months had been grueling. They had cheated death several times. The numerous injuries riddling Kai's body were a testament to the danger they had faced. At this moment, the auction was about to commence. Although all guests could enter the White Castle, none would do so until the night party, except those attending the auction. No rule prevented them from entering the castle, but those invited chose not to until after the auction concluded. "These taste so good," Livia commented, glancing at Amelia. "Of course, at this gala all the delicacies from different continents are served," Amelia responded. Currently, servants from the association that managed the Calvers Gala with the 7 heads were attending to them. Given the high status of the guests, the food was meticulously checked multiple times. After all, almost every seat holder of the High Council that managed this world and the society were present here with their families. "Lady Greville, Lady Liver wants to meet with you," one of the maids informed Sylvie. "Tell her to meet me in the garden outside," Sylvie replied as the maid went to deliver the message. "Amelia, take care of the twins," Sylvie instructed, to which Amelia nodded in acknowledgement. While nobody would dare harm the Grevilles, caution was still prudent. Sylvie was well aware that half the elite families despised the Grevils, but they were powerless against them. This had remained unchanged for centuries. "Does Aunt Sylvie know Lady Liver?" Livia inquired. "Well, she once told me that she knew her personally, but I don't know any further details," Amelia replied. Sylvie went outside, looking at the woman with long black hair and greyish eyes. Her beauty was on par with Sylvie's, but Christina stood up to greet her. "Pleasure to meet you, Lady Liver," Sylvie said, taking a seat in the garden surrounded by magical orbs that illuminated their surroundings. "The pleasure is mine," Christina replied with a smile. "You have made this gala quite beautiful," Sylvie complimented. "I just did what I know best," Christina responded, maintaining her smile. Despite feeling intimidated by Sylvie's aura, everyone in the business industry knew the true nature of Sylvie Greville. "So, what brings you here?" Sylvie asked, picking up a cup from the table. "I just wanted to have a chat with you. After all, not many people get the chance to meet the CEO of a Abyss Corporation due to your busy schedule," Christina said, producing a black gemstone. "Is this the Midnight Gemstone?" Sylvie asked, recognizing the stone. "Quite beautiful, but I still want to know the real reason for your visit," Sylvie said, returning the cup to the table. Sigh. "All right, but please accept this gift from the Liver family," Christina said. Seeing that Sylvie didn't refuse her gift, she decided to reveal the true purpose of her visit. "You might have heard that Lady Cassie is attending the gala as well," Christina began, but didn't notice any change in Sylvie's expression. "I have, but she is free to do so," Sylvie replied. She could guess what Christina was about to say. "Let's not be so formal, Christina." Sylvie finally dropped the formal tone, realizing why Christina, her friend, had gone out of her way to meet her. "I hope you don't mind my saying this, but you shouldn't have brought those two here. It's obvious why Cassie Hargrave has come to this gala," Christina pointed out. "You should mind your words, Christina. There's no need to make an enemy of the Hargrave family," Sylvie spoke. "Oh, come on, don't dodge my question," Christina countered. She had come here because she was friends with Sylvie, though it had been a long time since they last met like this. While their conversation continued, the auction started. Currently, Arthur was sitting with David beside him. "As the esteemed guests know, in this auction you cannot use real money," Cameron announced from the center of the room, feeling the heavy gaze of many powerful people. "So this is what the old man was telling me about," Cameron thought, feeling the presence of the influential people around him. The massive auction hall was designed in such a way that all 40 spots were separated from each other. However, the tension was high as enemies sat under the same roof. Among them was James Rothschild, who sat away from Arthur. James was distracted, aware of the stares he was receiving because of the blunder Louis had made. Camden Whiteheart, sitting with the head of the Williams family, felt those stares the most, but they died down as Williams' family head and Camden sat together. After all, the eldest son of the Williams family was engaged to the eldest daughter of the Whiteheart family. Their shared seat symbolized an alliance between the two families. "As you know, we will use teal slabs that you all must possess," Cameron said. In this auction, real money was not accepted, as many of the artifacts were priceless. Instead, attendees used teal slabs earned through selling items at the auction. If a person submitted an S-rank artifact, they would gain a certain amount of teal slabs based on the type of artifact, and the number of teal slabs would increase as the ranks of the artifact increased. As the elite families had economic restrictions, this system made it possible for them to buy such artifacts. The restrictions were not applicable to entities like the Abyss Corporation or Abyss Guild in the case of the Greville family, as neither were fully run by the Greville family alone. "We will start with the S-rank artifacts," Cameron announced as many decided to participate in the auction. "You didn't bring Damien along?" Arthur asked David. "Do you think I'd let him see these artifacts?" David retorted. "Well, it's not like he will misuse these artifacts," Arthur reasoned. "I know, but it's better for him not to know about such things until he gets stronger," David responded. The artifacts auctioned at the Calvers Gala were different from those auctioned elsewhere. This attracted the elite families to the gala almost every time. but all the artifacts followed a single pattern. They were used either for absolute destruction or absolute healing. Every artifact here required a lot of mana and could cause significant destruction or provide intense healing, such as an SSS rank healing elixir, capable of saving a highly injured SSS rank hunter. The gala ensured no single family could amass all the artifacts to bid at the auction. You needed to submit artifacts that passed the criteria first. Still, the World Association would collect most of these artifacts as they operated the largest guild in the world. Other guilds, run by the elite families, were powerful but couldn't compare to the combined might of the World Association. With headquarters in all 5 components, all 3 associations were formed to oppose the elite families if needed. "This is the first artifact," Cameron announced, presenting a bracelet adorned with orange runes, capable of using a Tier 4 fire spell. He described, "The guests can start bidding now," Cameron said. A single guest raised their hand. 5 teals. The head of the Watson family bid. "Not a bad choice," Arthur mused to himself. After all, the Watson family was known for producing many fire mages and individuals with a strong affinity for fire. Seeing the Watson family head bid, no one else did. They didn't need the artifact that badly. The auction had just begun, and no one wanted to rush, especially since the much-anticipated SS rank artifacts had not yet arrived. While these powerful individuals were excitedly anticipating the auction's start and the powerful artifacts up for grabs, they were blissfully unaware of the chaos that was about to descend soon enough. In the garden outside the mansion where the Greville family was residing, "I hope you'll consider my advice," Christina suggested as she stood up. "I know, but no one will belittle those children," Sylvie firmly stated, a clear indication to Christina that she was unyielding on this matter. "You won't be able to prevent the inevitable criticism that will be directed at them," Christina pointed out as she made her exit. Indeed, since the biological mother of Lucas and Livia remained unknown, it was almost certain that the higher echelons of society would cast their scorn upon them. This was one of the reasons why the head of the DeMarcus family agreed to conceal Vanessa's true identity until she felt ready to adopt the DeMarcus family name. However, the circumstances surrounding Lucas and Livia were distinctly different from others. The very reason that Christina went out of her way to converse with Sylvie was because she recognized that the existence of these twins could significantly enhance the future strength of the Greville family. Moreover, there was a high probability that, for the first time in history, 2 SSS rank hunters might emerge from the same family. Such a prospect was something that many did not wish to see come to fruition. The auction was in full swing, with more and more artifacts being brought up for bidding. Bidding wars were rare, occurring only a handful of times. "You're not bidding on anything?" David asked as he won the bid on a gauntlet-type artifact. "Not really. We don't need them in the Abyss Guild," Arthur replied. Even if one were not aware of the resources the Greville family had, it would be easy to imagine the wealth they must have amassed over hundreds of years as an elite family. This was why Arthur was in no rush to purchase anything that didn't catch his eye. Most bids were from people procuring artifacts for their guilds. Like the Abyss Guild, many elite families had formed guilds to expand their power. While economic constraints varied among elite families, they all could extend their influence through the formation of guilds. Yet, everyone present understood that such economic limitations had no bearing on families like the Greville. Sylvie had successfully turned the Abyss Corporation, mainly dealing with mana crystals, into a corporation worth trillions of ore. This was possible because the Raven and Greville families decided to collaborate, with the Raven family owning a significant share in the Abyss Corporation, which was unmistakably under Sylvie's control. Moreover, the Seymour family was closely tied to the Greville family. As a result, the Greville family managed the Abyss Corporation while adhering to any imposed restrictions. But as simple as this arrangement seemed, Sylvie faced considerable opposition when managing the Abyss Corporation. In some area, however, none dared to openly challenge the Greville family due to the feared presence of Nathaniel Greville. Unlike other elite families, the Greville were known for their ruthless behavior and actions. Their image only shifted after Ava's death. eth section eth cubed eth broken bar eth apostrophe currency eth apostrophe eth degrees eth middle dot eth apostrophe tm dot eth apostrophe o eth registered upper society, however, remained unaffected. Well, the real action will start on the third day, David said as Arthur smirked. Of course, I know, Arthur replied. Certain items like mana gems above S rank, and SSS rank artifacts were not bought with money alone. The number of SSS rank dungeons appearing was generally 1 or 2 at most within a 5-year span, but to clear them, at least 4 SSS rank hunters would enter the dungeon, accompanied by multiple SS rank hunters. That's why no single person could claim the artifact, leading the World Association to submit the artifact to the Calvers Gala. But there was something even more valuable than an SSS rank artifact, a reason why all these SSS rank hunters attended the gala. It was the SSS rank mana gem, the only thing capable of enhancing their power that had hit a plateau. This time, SSS rank mana gem was set to be auctioned off at the Calvers Gala. Osbert, are you sure you want to submit all these SS rank artifacts to the gala? One of the vice chairmen asked Osbert Tavian, after they had left the White Castle and were sitting in one of the mansions arranged for them. You underestimate the funds of these elite families, Osbert replied. Well, if you say so. The vice chairman stood up and left the mansion. Where is Leon? Osbert said as he disrupted the sound barrier around him. The servant immediately entered and bowed before Osbert. Young Master Leonard is in his room, the servant replied. Tell him to come meet me, Osbert replied as he stared at the sky above them. In an instant, he cast another sound barrier around him. Does he think he can get the mana gem? Osbert smiled, understanding the vice chairman's concerns. After all, among the 3 SSS rank hunters, as the chairman, Osbert held priority. It had been 15 years since a SSS rank mana gem appeared, and Osbert had no intention of surrendering it without a fight. I have failed once, but luck won't favor you twice, Osbert mused, reviewing the information he had gathered thus far. The only concern was Erwin, the professor he planted in the World Academy to assist Leonard with his plans. Osbert didn't want to leave any loose ends that could create problems later on. He needed to confirm that Erwin was already dead. He was confident that nobody could make Erwin betray him. Erwin wouldn't dare move against Osbert, as doing so would cost him his life, but she should be enough to keep them busy for a while. Osbert smiled, contemplating his next move. Osbert lifted the sound barrier for a moment to allow Leonard to enter his room. Meanwhile, at the mansion where the Rothschild family was staying, I didn't see your sister, Rio asked Kevin, who was sitting on the couch with Elena and Eva present in the room. You don't know? Kevin asked Ria, who seemed puzzled. Oh, I forgot to mention it to her, Elena said. Eva's brother Reese is coming back, so she'll arrive with him after the auction, Elena informed Ria. So, they are on a date? Rio asked, glancing at Eva. Wait, does that mean he'll be returning to the academy? Rio asked Eva, who nodded in response. Kevin was sitting there because Camden didn't allow him to accompany him to the auction. By the way, did you guys coordinate your outfits? Rio asked Elena and Kevin. Not yet, Kevin admitted, scratching the back of his head. What? Rio was taken aback. How could you let him be so lax? You guys will be dancing in the main hall, Rio admonished Elena. He was busy training. Elena defended Kevin, but Ria's glare didn't lighten. We still have time, and I'm sure Aunt Philia would have coordinated your dress, Eva said Ria, laughing at the awkward situation Kevin was in. The formal dance, the main event of the night party on the first day of the gala, was solely for the younger generation, who would dance with their partners. Ria and Eva were also asked out by multiple guys, but both of them turned them down. Elena was delighted that she would dance with Kevin, and seeing that, Kevin was slightly relieved as after the midterms, Elena spent all her time training. He still felt guilty for not being able to keep his promise and defeat Tasha. Meanwhile, at the mansion where the Alistair family was staying, Sam looked down, a hand on his shoulder. He gritted his teeth to endure pain. Don't embarrass our family at the gala, okay? The Duchess of the Alistair family said, Looking down at Sam, Sam tolerated it, knowing that antagonizing her would only exacerbate his problems. They wanted him to look good. As the formal dance of the night party was broadcast to the world, they didn't want Sam to look bad as he was still considered the son of the Duchess of the Alistair family. "Go back to your room, and make yourself more presentable," she told him, turning to Jack who was sitting on the couch, watching Sam. "I heard that the heir of the Greville family defeated Blake Cranston," she said, lifting her dress to sit on the sofa. "That did happen, but it was just a spar. Blake wasn't serious," Jack replied, a bit nervous under his mother's gaze. She had been strict with Jack and his training, ensuring that he outshone Sam and all the other children from the Halcyon, elite families. "Your father told you to support Leonard Tavian, not become his subordinate, remember that," she advised Jack. Sam, on his way back to his room, looked back, his eyes momentarily cold. This woman was the reason he had suffered so much humiliation over the years. "I will kill you with my own hands one day," Sam swore, retreating to his room. "Why isn't he here yet?" Sam muttered, learning from a servant that the heir of the Greville family had yet to arrive. "Well, at least my father will be preoccupied with the auction," Sam thought, finding a small comfort. It was better to endure a few harsh words than face his father, but there was another person who wasn't as lucky as Sam. "Stand up," Cade Cranston commanded, staring at Blake who lay on the floor, blood trickling from his mouth. "Should we stop them?" one of the servants asked the head butler, who was himself worried. He knew that Cade wouldn't let Blake off easy, but the gala was happening and they couldn't afford to have Blake appear injured in front of everyone. "Stand up," these were the words that Blake heard, but he didn't want to stand up again. Whenever he would stand up, Cade would make him block his strike with his sword, but the result was always the same, with Blake being defeated multiple times, and it would remain this way because, no matter what Blake did, the difference between a C rank and an S rank hunter was too big. He had expected to be severely punished, but he didn't think Cade would do it at the Calvers Gala. "I will train harder, brother," Blake said as he crouched. "I didn't ask you to make excuses, Blake." "Stand up," Cade said as he looked down at Blake. "I shouldn't have asked him to teach me." Blake clenched his teeth, as he regretted his choice. Cade Cranston had spent all his years after graduating from World Academy honing his sword skills. His only motivation was to create a sword art even more powerful than what the sword god, Nathaniel Greville, used, and hearing that his brother, who he had taught his sword art to, had lost to a first year, and that person was Asher Greville, Cade was not at all happy. He felt like it was him who had been defeated instead of Blake. "Young master," the butler finally intervened as Cade turned his head. "Young Master Blake will be attending the dance hall, so it wouldn't look good if he wasn't in his best condition," the butler said. The dance hall would be broadcasted to the whole world, and it was a way that elite families and other High Council members showcased themselves. If Blake was injured or not fully well, it would affect the reputation of the Cranston family. "We can give him all the healing potion he needs," Cade said as he looked at the butler, "but he might not be in the best mental condition," the butler said as he bowed his head a bit. Seeing the old butler who had served his family for years, Cade considered his suggestion as he looked back at Blake. "All right, but I don't think your lesson is over. After the gala is over, we will begin from where we stopped today," Cade said as he turned back and left with the butler. As soon as Cade departed, the butler signaled the other servants to take care of Blake. Each family was allowed to bring 10 servants to the gala, but those servants couldn't enter the White Castle. Only the seat holders, like Nathan and Sylvus, were allowed to bring 2 of their people inside the White Castle during the night party with them. This was to ensure that all the servants in the White Castle serving the guests were from the association that managed the Calvers Gala. At the Greville mansion, Lucas was spending his time with Nate, who was getting along with Lucas quite well. "I heard you reached F rank," Nate said as he jumped on the bed. "Yeah," Lucas replied as he looked at the book Nate had just given him. "This is the general theory behind spell construction. I have read it already so you can keep it," Nate said. Because Lucas had a quiet nature, and he didn't bother Nate like other kids his age, Nate got along with him quite well. Even though they only met once or twice a month, Nate would usually bring over things he wanted to give to Lucas, but most of the time they would spend together with Nate telling him about how useless and annoying their family members were. David had already told Nate to treat the twins as people who were not aware of the upper society and how its people behaved. Knowing that his youngest son acted more responsibly than his oldest, David thought Nate would be a good friend for Lucas. "I will read it later," Lucas said as he turned a few pages. "Are you still reading that book?" Nate asked Lucas. "I have completed it halfway," Lucas replied, and Nate was surprised. "Really?" Nate spoke. "But isn't it crazy how many families that were in the High Council disappeared over time?" Nate said. It had been hundreds of years since the High Council was first created, and it was not hard to see that many of the original families were still present today. The reason was simple: not all families could have a genius or a capable hunter as their family head every generation, and that made the power of those elite families decline as they eventually fell and were removed from the High Council. A new family would then be chosen. The only absolute seats in the High Council were reserved for the 3 associations, and the leaders of these associations were chosen by the members of those associations themselves. The seat that was given to World Academy originally belonged to Farnus, as he was an SSS rank hunter, but he proposed to change it to World Academy itself, so that the next principal of the World Academy could take that position, and thus, the 4th absolute seat was made in the High Council. "I only read up to the part about the Karshala family, which was the first head of the High Council," Lucas replied. "Yeah, but after the fall of the Karshala family, all the seats became equal with no leader," Nate said. "But these books really don't go into detail about why such a thing happened," Nate said as their conversation continued. I just want this gala to be over," Nate said as he looked at the ceiling. "You don't like these events?" Lucas asked. He had heard from his tutors that the Calvers Gala was the biggest and one of the most beautiful events that everyone wanted to attend, but hearing from Nate, it didn't sound like an event you would want to go to. "I would rather stay at home," Nate replied. "Do you even know how many times my mom told me to make sure I greet all the people at the gala?" he said, "and the number of times I was reminded to behave appropriately. But even if I do so, it doesn't change the fact that more than half the people here would want others to mess up so that they would look good," Nate said as he tried to explain it to Lucas. "And I heard Dad say that as the auction goes on, it only gets worse and I should be careful around others as well," Nate said. Although what Nate said was somewhat true, part of his dislike of going to social events made him exaggerate it a bit to Lucas. The only people among the younger generation where all eyes were focused were the heirs of the elite families or the potential ones. It wasn't hard to say that the current heirs would one day sit in the High Council. So many people wanted to see what those kids were like. Gaining information on the heirs of the elite families was incredibly hard due to the existence of World Academy, and the fact that the elite families always blocked most of this information from leaking. "When will the auction end?" Lucas asked Nate. "I heard from my brother that it will end in 3 hours, Nate replied. 3 hours, and the party will begin at night, right? Lucas asked and Nate nodded. So my brother would come at night, Lucas thought in his head. He wasn't too bothered about people going after him, but he still listened to Nate, as he didn't want Livia to experience anything like this. But Lucas right now was not aware of how things worked in situations when so many powerful figures gathered in one place. Unlike his past where people openly showed their hatred, that was not the case here. The Greville family had protected them in such a way that not even a single word that condemned them was heard by the twins. Although it was good for the twins, it made them vulnerable and naive to things that could and would happen in the future. It was impossible to shield them from the world forever, and that was why Nathan wanted them to experience this themselves. At the mansion in Saran, Emmy was waiting outside the mansion as per Asher's orders, but she didn't feel right bringing Alyssa with them as well. After all, she knew that if Asher was seen close with Alyssa, it would spark rumors that could harm his reputation. Right now, there were many people who were looking for a way to condemn the heir of the Greville family, as Asher's talent was threatening to many people. I should just follow his orders, Emmy told herself. After all, she had decided to follow Asher, and Emmy believed that Asher knew what he was doing. But if the situation arose where Emmy had to abandon Alyssa to save Asher, she would not think twice about doing so. Inside the mansion, Asher removed the mask from his face, as Tom lifted his hands from his setup. "If nothing goes wrong on their end, the mission will be a success," Tom said as he looked at Asher. "Make sure to hide your tracks. The eyes on us will increase to such an extent that you'll have a hard time covering things later," Asher said. "We have come to the last 5 items of the auction," Cameron announced. "The 5th item is 20s rank mana gems," Cameron said. "Not bad," Arthur remarked. David looked at Arthur's wide smile and knew what he was about to do. 30 teal slabs, Arthur said as he placed his first bid of the day. Instantly many eyes turned to the spot, recognizing that it was Arthur who had bid for this item. Is he doing it again? Some of them had such thoughts in their heads. Until now, everyone had gotten what they wanted, with a few bid wars occurring. They were relieved that Greville hadn't participated yet. After all, they were aware of Arthur Greville's habit of inflating the prices of items he wanted if he couldn't obtain them easily. "No wonder Greville has so many enemies," David muttered, and Arthur ignored his comments. 50 teal slabs, James Rothschild said, entering the bid war himself. So it was true, the friction between these two families had increased, the Hargrave family head noted, witnessing James's bid. 60 teal slabs, another voice came, the Cranston family head. S-rank mana gems were extremely useful for S-rank hunters and below, even some SS rank hunters would use them. Knowing that his son, Cade Cranston, was an S-rank, it wasn't hard to see why the Cranston family head was bidding on this item. From the start, Arthur only bid because he wanted these mana gems for Asher, but knowing that others would bid as well, Arthur wouldn't let them get these mana gems too easily. 70 teal slabs, Arthur said, pushing the bid. Normally, these S-rank mana gems were worth around 80 teal slabs, and Arthur was not going to let anyone have them for less than 100 teal slabs. 90 teal slabs, the Cranston family head said. Seeing the Cranston family head, James immediately stopped bidding as he didn't need to interfere anymore. Out of everyone present, the Cranston family was the one that always tried to compete with the Greville family, and having heard the news of the second son of the Cranston family losing in a spar with Asher Greville, it was clear why the Cranston family head didn't want to lose these S-rank mana gems. 100 teal slabs, Arthur said. 110 teal slabs, the Cranston family head spoke out again. 120 teal slabs, Arthur increased the bid. At this point, no one else was joining because they knew doing so would be futile. "You seem eager to buy these mana gems, Arthur," the Cranston family head said, revealing his SS rank presence. "What if I am?" Arthur retorted, showcasing his own SS rank presence, which surprised a few. Not everyone knew about Arthur's rise to SS rank, but he had a reason for revealing his rank. Arthur would have kept his rank a secret if he wanted to hide it, but doing so would only give others the idea they could band against the Grevilles. Hiding your strength only gave others the impression they could oppose you, and Arthur didn't want that outcome at all. 130 teal slabs, the Cranston family head said, increasing the bid. 140 teal slabs, Arthur said, pushing the bid. David shook his head, knowing that Arthur wasn't going to buy these S-rank mana gems for 140 teal slabs. Instead, he was trying to pressure the Cranston family head to bid more. 150 teal slabs, the Cranston family head said after some thought. "If you want them so badly, you can have them," Arthur said, ceasing to bid. "You really push your luck too much," David said, looking at Arthur. "I would have bought these mana gems, if not for that old man telling me not to spend too much on other things," Arthur replied. Nathan had told him not to overspend as he wanted to obtain the SSS rank mana gem that would be auctioned on the third day. Cameron brought out a few more artifacts, and one of them was an all-elemental damage necklace which James Rothschild bought for 120 teal slabs for Elena in the future. That necklace was known to boost a caster's damage, while capable of unleashing tier 3 spells of all basic elements engraved on it. The last item was a SS rank spear, which people thought that the Alistair head or the Whiteheart family head would buy, but neither of them bid on it. As Sam Alistair and Kevin Whiteheart were both spear users, many thought that they would bid to secure such a spear for their children. After all, there were not too many weapon-type artifacts, and even if there were, it didn't mean that it would be a spear. With this, we conclude the auction for day 1, but this is only the start, Cameron announced. The night party will begin in a few hours, Cameron said as the servants arrived behind him with the items that were auctioned today. We will deliver these artifacts to your accommodations, Cameron said as all 40 of them stood up. As Cameron finished speaking, the White Castle began to glow as various mages cast magic, causing numerous light-inducing orbs to float throughout the White Castle. Preparations for the night party began as the servants started arranging tables and all the things needed for the events that would unfold. At this time, all the guests returned to their accommodations to get ready for the gala. Damien, did you check on Nate? Verena asked as the maids put an expensive necklace made of blue gemstones round her neck. I did, Mom, he's getting ready with Lucas, Damien replied while sitting on the couch. Make sure that you don't mess up your dance, Verena said, smiling at Damien. I don't mess things up, and I practiced. Damien stopped midway, feeling embarrassed. Silly boy, Verena muttered, causing the maids to giggle and make Damien even more embarrassed. I will check on Dad, Damien said, standing up and leaving the room. Meanwhile, in the Greville mansion, how do I look? Livia asked Lucas, showing him her dress. She was wearing a cute black dress with golden engravings and a belt of thin, crimson velvet cinched her waist, matching perfectly with her eyes. She had a matching dress with Lucas's black suit that had similar golden engraving around the cuffs. You look good, Lucas said with a smile, but the maids were getting nervous as Livia kept moving from one place to another. They were trying to do light makeup on her, but her energetic personality made it difficult for them. As Livia recovered, she transformed from a sickly person to a child with endless energy. Why don't you get ready with Big Sister? Lucas suggested, noticing the maids struggle to dress Livia up. Oh, yeah, but I will come back to check on you, Livia said as she left the room. Lucas turned to look at Nate, who was sitting casually in a light blue suit. Nate and the twins were going with the adults, while there was a different section for younger people like Damien and Amelia. By the way, look at this, Nate called to Lucas. What is it? Lucas looked at Nate, who was showing him a video. It's my idiot brother practicing dancing. I recorded him, Nate said, laughing. You're going to get beaten again, Lucas thought as he saw Nate laughing. Don't tell him I have this, though, Nate said, to which Lucas nodded. The night party was about to begin, and everyone was getting ready to attend. On the way to the Calvers Gala, did you enjoy my present, Relin? A young man asked the person beside him. Well, it was nice to spend a day like that, Relin replied as they sat in the car. So are we going to the gala now? Relin asked. Yes, I've already arranged a mansion near the teleportation gates, where you can get ready, the young man said. But you didn't tell me that your injury had healed, Relin said. Well, my father didn't allow me to, but I'll make sure to inform you beforehand next time, he replied. This young man was Rhys Williams, the heir of the Williams family and Relin Whiteheart's fiancée. Copyright. By the way, I didn't bring up the topic earlier, but I've heard a lot about Tasha Greville, Rhys said, noticing a change in Relin's expression. Is he really that talented? Rhys asked, maintaining his calm demeanor. Although I don't want to admit it, the rumors you're talking about are true, Relin replied. Interesting, I'll meet him at the gala anyway, Rhys said, smiling. Do you dislike him? Rhys asked, noticing Relin's expression. Of course, after what he did to Elena and the fact that he beat my brother, it would be weird for me to say that I don't dislike him, Relin told Rhys. Rhys didn't say anything more, because he already knew everything about Tasha, as Leonard had told him about it earlier. Well, let's pretend to be friendly with him, Rhys thought. He knew that Leonard was aware of his actions, but letting his emotions get riled up by Tasha Greville had thwarted his plans. That's why Rhys was going to change his approach completely. After all, even if Reese managed to suppress Asher's influence in World Academy, everything would change the moment Asher graduated. Asher's talent was a significant variable that could affect their plans. As you all know, we will cover the main part of the gala that will start soon. The reporter spoke, looking at a camera that was floating in the air. In the meantime, we can see the famous White Castle of Mzelm Flying Island, he said as the camera turned towards its right to showcase a beautiful sight of the White Castle glowing in the night. Many reporters were filming the castle as they were not permitted to film the guests unless it was the main dance. Most people were looking forward to the first day of the gala. They were excited to see the attendees who were from the families that managed the whole world. The White Castle had one main entrance, but everyone's entry time had been confirmed already. This was to ensure that no two guests entered at the same time. One by one, the other invited guests entered with their family. All of them were dressed in luxurious clothes and gemstones. The entrance of the White Castle had various illusions of colorful mana strings floating around, creating a vibrant atmosphere as the guests entered. At first, all the non-High Council guests entered one by one with their families. These were people who had much control over high society, but they were still below the elite families. Each of these families was supporting one of the High Council members that attended the gala. "Wow, this is so beautiful," a few young ladies that entered the White Castle commented. Each staircase would lead you to different sections of the night party. The most important fact was that they could see that all the cultures of the 5 different continents were respected. The Calvers Gala showcased the unity of the High Council to the world, but in reality, it was a place where enmities would start over the auctioned items. "Make sure to talk to the people I told you about," some parents told their kids. Even if they were invited to the gala, it didn't mean that they were strong enough to stand against the elite families. That's why most of these families would have their children make connections with the young generation of the elite families, in order to ensure that the future of their families remained bright. Soon the guests arrived at their own reserved sections. As the time for the High Council members' families began, the White Castle consisted of a main hall which was large enough for multiple events to happen at the same time. The main hall had a big screen placed there so that the host could say a few words and the main attraction of the second day auction would be revealed. After the formal dance would end, they would display the last 10 items apart from the last 2 that would be presented on day 2, allowing people to decide earlier what they would bid on. As the guests entered the main hall, there was another entrance, but it was for the first floor of the main hall. All the adults would stay on the second floor that connected to the first hall with a massive staircase in the middle. Even children who were below the age of 14 would stay with their parents, as the first floor was only for the children above 14. Soon many young men and women started to enter the first floor, where a sitting arrangement was also set up for them. As the first floor was reserved for young people, it wasn't hard to see them observing each other openly. Unlike the adults, who didn't reveal their intentions openly, these young people were still a bit immature in that regard. Not all of them were trained and educated as some elite families would have their children go through, so they could learn how to act in high society from a young age. And one by one, the elite families started entering, with several eyes falling on the people that were entering now. Each of them exuded a powerful aura, and their confidence showed that they were aware of their positions and how much power they held. The first 3 elite families to enter were from Halcyon, and as they entered, the entire main hall turned vibrant green, reflecting the color at the royal family's insignia. But people also noticed that King Rewil Halcyon entered alone, without the Queen accompanying him. Instead, accompanying Rewil were Archduchess Everett and Archduke Alistair with their families trailing behind them. Jack and Sam entered from the first floor, along with Licia Halcyon, who entered alone without a partner, and to her left was the 4th-year student of the World Academy, belonging to the Everett family. Next were the families of Fascia Continent, with the Watson family entering first, followed by Alexander Asteria entering the White Castle, and the Cranston family entering last. While Cade also ascended to the second floor. The second floor was so large and divided into many sections that it was difficult to see one person from one end to the other. The light illuminated a bright yellow, representing the hot climate of fascia that prevailed most of the year. Next, the light turned sapphire blue, hinting at the entrance of the elite families from the Dismar continent. Lady Liver has made this gala truly beautiful, Philia said as she looked at the entrance of the White Castle. Did you like it that much? James asked, and Philia nodded as they both entered together. It's the Rothschilds. One of the people sitting there informed their kids about the identity of this couple. Next to enter were Camden Whiteheart and his wife. Relax, Camden, you don't need to be so cautious, the lady of the Whiteheart family said. I know, Camden replied as he entered the White Castle. Meanwhile, on the first floor, everyone was surprised to see Kevin Whiteheart and Elena Rothschild entering together. They look so gorgeous, a girl said to her partner, who was also stunned while looking at Elena. Usually at the World Academy, Elena and others would wear uniforms or training suits, but this was the first time they were seen in matching attire. Kevin was wearing a white suit, with light blue cuffs, while Elena donned a white dress, accentuated by a sapphire necklace. Eva and Ria entered together behind them, as the four of them took their seats. I would love to dance with him, a girl said, looking at Kevin. She was one of the few girls who had come without a partner. In high society, Kevin was still more famous than Asher, who rarely attended social events. Most people only knew Asher from the representative tournament, but Kevin had frequently appeared at social events. The lights turned light blue and the mana orbs started to flicker. It was time for the elite families from Belvoria continent to enter. The first was the Martel family, with Tyrone entering the first floor alone. His tall stature attracted many gazes, but he quietly took his seat, not wishing to draw any more attention to himself. Is he shy? Ria thought as she looked at Tyrone. Next to enter the White Castle was the Neville family, with Gavin accompanying one of the girls his father had advised him to partner with. However, the most shocking moment came with the entrance of the Hargrave family. Leading the Hargrave family, and walking in front of the family head, was Cassie Hargrave. Her crimson-red dress and stunning beauty mesmerized many people seated on the second floor, but within moments, they recognized Cassie's identity, and a single thought occupied their minds. Looking at Cassie's dress, they were certain that the reason for her attending a social event after a decade was due to the Greville's, or more accurately, the twins. It seems this night will be fun, the Neville family head smirked, discerning the expression on the Hargrave family head's face. From his expression alone, it was clear how much he had tried to stop Cassie, but in the end, he couldn't. It would be fun if she meets them, the Neville family head murmured, glancing at his wife beside him. Are you forgetting how that woman is? His wife retorted, no, but that's why I am looking forward to it, he replied. After all, many people here knew about Cassie's habits and her nature. It wasn't hard for them to predict what was going to happen next.